Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the meeting of the Lowell City Council to order and welcome. See a lot of familiar faces in the audience. Let us begin with the council prayer. Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. Please join me now in honoring America. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And again, good evening. Mr. Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilor Dakota.
Here.
Councilor Elliott.
Here.
Councilor Martin.
Here.
Councilor Mendonça.
Here.
Councilor Mercia.
Here.
Mayor Milanazzo.
Here.
Councilor Murphy.
Here.
Councilor Broderick.
Here.
Councilor Caulfield. 9 present.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm requesting a moment of silence for darkened chambers for William D. Lewis, a loving and devoted husband, father, and grandfather. Mr. Lewis served this country in the United States Navy during the Second World War with pride and distinction. An outstanding family man and citizen of our city. May he rest in peace.
Thank you, Councilor Caulfield. May we all rise now in a moment of silence in darkened chambers, and also to remember those who have passed away since our last council meeting. Thank you. May they rest in peace. We're just going to go through a few housekeeping items this evening. Then I'm going to ask my colleagues if we can take Councilor Murphy's motion out of order so that we can get right to the discussion that most of you are here for this evening. So the first item would be to accept the minutes of the November 9th meeting. Motion by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Mendonça, to accept the minutes and place on file. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. First item under City Manager, communication from City Manager, responses to council motions and requests. The chair recognizes Councilor Caulfield. You looking for a suspension at this particular point, or you just?
I thought you were going to suspend the rules to allow Councilor Murphy's motion to be.
No, we're going to
okay.
do this first, Councilor.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, through you to the manager. Mr. Manager, I want to thank you for painting the crosswalk at the Hellenic Academy. It was much appreciated by the school and the students and the parents and grandparents. But I just want to bring up the sign issue again. Mr. Anderson and the school has never, ever received any communication pertaining to these signs. They don't know anything about it. And I'd like to have Mr. Anderson briefly just bring his feelings forward. Believe me, it won't be that long, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate
We need
the
a motion
opportunity for
to
Mr.
suspend the
Anderson.
rules. Motion to suspend the rules by Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Mendonça. All those in favor of suspension for the purpose of hearing from Mr. Anderson signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Mr. Anderson? Well, good evening.
Thank you for the opportunity. About a month ago, through correspondence, I asked the council to consider the safety issues surrounding the community. We have 160 students, about 80% are members of residents of the Lowell community. What I'm asking for is the replacement of signs along the Acorn signs where Acorn lights were replaced. Telephone poles and all of that signage was replaced by the Historical Society. I'm asking for signs to be returned that indicate pedestrian crossing and school zone, southbound on Broadway, and the pedestrian walkway on Dummer Street to be returned as they were before when I arrived at the school 4 years ago. As principal of the community, I'm very concerned about the safety and the welfare of our children, and I have great confidence in the city of Lowell. Your engineer has visited us, and we've walked through. My number one priority is the eight parking spaces from National Grid to the end of Worthen Street, that December 1st through March 1st, that be a no parking zone because of snow emergency, to allow fire, emergency, trash, large trucks, any large vehicles of any size to be able to pass down Worthing Street safely on our street. I do appreciate the painting of the sidewalk. I do have a parent volunteer that's helping in the morning. However, it's imperative to the safety of our children that, and our families that the signage be returned to at least attach to those Acorn lights. I travel about the city as an official and as just a person of interest. The other ecumenical schools, the parochial schools, and the public schools have all had new signage put up indicating walkways, including up on Andover Street at Draper, and also along Lowell Catholic and St. Michael's. There have been signs put there that indicate a crosswalk where children, pedestrians, it's the two figures holding books, yellow signs. If they can be attached to the Acorn lights, that's a big improvement. So I'm seeking some resolution and correspondence. I've heard nothing directly from the council or from the city manager, other than your engineer came, and there's been no further correspondence regarding this regard. I am seeking some safety for our children on the Broadway, Worthing, Broadway, and Dummer Street, a very high-traffic area. We've had 2 serious accidents since the last time I spoke to the city council a month ago. So thank you for your time. I appreciate everything, but I would like to hear something back for our parents.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Manager?
Just in response, Mr. Anderson, we will follow up, and we'll be back in touch with you within the next day or so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anything else while we're on communications? Councilor Rita Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is communications and our
Yes.
agenda. Talking about
We're back
communications.
on the regular agenda now.
Right,
yes.
I just want to thank you, Mr. Manager, for putting this, my request, and putting the locks on the computers so that people off the street that aren't senior citizens are not going and looking at smut on our computers in a city building. So thank you for putting that on there.
Thank you. Anything else on that communication? Responses to motion? Hearing none. Motion by Councilor Elliott, second by Councilor Dakota, that we accept the communication placed on file. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed to vote. The chair would entertain a motion from Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Broderick, that we suspend the rules in order to bring Councilor Murphy's motion forward at this time. Motion to suspend the rules. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Thank you. Motion this evening by Councilor Patrick Murphy. City Council requests the city manager to report on the implementation of healthcare plan design in practice and establish guidelines with the City Council for use of potential authority. Second by Councilor Mercia. Councilor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief tonight, as I understand there are a few speakers here. Back in July, the City Council approved a home rule petition to give the manager authority over healthcare plan design, as well as the potential, really, to join the state's GIC, the Group Insurance Commission. My motion really addresses the first part of it, which deals with the healthcare, the health insurance plan design, and is really just asking for a report on how this would be implemented if it were to be passed by the legislature, and to work in concert with the council on developing guidelines on the use by not only this manager but by future managers, because I think it is important that if this authority is given to the manager, that we do have some better understanding of how this would work in practice, in some guidelines on making sure that it does for future managers as well.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. We do have, I believe, 11 people who have registered to speak. At this time, if it's okay with my colleagues, I would invite them to come to the podium, give your name and address. And I also would just like to remind you all that we do have a 5-minute rule here in the chamber. So you're certainly entitled to go up to 5 minutes, but the clerk will actually call according to the sign-in sheet.
George Ryan, 27 Robert Bigelow Street in Chelmsford.
Good evening, Mr. Ryan.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr. City Manager, members of the City Council. My name is George Ryan. I live at 27 Robert Bigelow Street in Chelmsford. I'm a retired Lowell police officer. I worked 33 years for the City of Lowell, and I've been retired for nearly 14 years now. I'm currently in charge of the Greater Lowell Retired Police Officers Association. And we're not a union. The Lowell Centers call us a union on a couple of occasions, but we're not a union. In fact, we're 100% dependent on the unions here tonight to preserve our retiree benefits, including Master Medical. And my members are very concerned about the possibility of losing their Master Medical insurance. And if you give the city manager his plan design, he'll have absolute power to change our health insurance. Absolute power is absolutely wrong. In the June 8th edition of the Lowell Sun, this is what the Sun had to say about Master Medical, and I'll quote. Master Medical provides full coverage for emergency room visits, surgery, and inpatient hospital care. What Master Medical provides is the flexibility of coverage at any hospital or doctor without a referral, as well as unlimited care in a nursing facility with no out-of-pocket costs, which makes the plan attractive to employees with serious ailments, and we fully agree with that. If I may, I'm going to tell you a story about a very dear friend of mine. He had a very rare form of cancer, and he was hospitalized in a Boston hospital, Mass General, for over a year and a half, and he had quite an ordeal. And he was treated by teams of doctors, and he received several experimental treatments, which were out of the so-called network. I can't comment on the treatments because it's HIPAA patient privacy laws that are in effect. And then later on, he was in and out of several nursing homes and rehab facilities. Thank God today he's cancer-free. Now, a couple of his doctors told him he was very lucky that he had Master Medical insurance because he didn't need any referrals, he didn't have to wait for approvals, there was no red tape, there was no paperwork delays, everything went very smoothly. Now, if he had another plan, more than likely there would have been some delays. In this case, a delay of a day or two could have been fatal. Master Medical was a lifesaver. Okay, now on August 18th of this year, the city manager invited an informal meeting of all the union heads in Lowell. I believe there's 17. And it was about half a dozen retirees that showed up. I was one of them. And I got to ask the manager a couple of questions. And one of them was, if you got plan designed, if you could switch us to another Blue Cross plan. And he said, yes, I could. And I said, well, in year 2, if you wanted to switch us to you change your mind, you wanted to switch us to the GIC, that's the Group Insurance Commission, which is the state's plan, if you could. And he said, yes, I could. And I said, well, in year 3, if there was some bargain basement, low-cost Band-Aid company came along, you could do that. And he says, well, I wouldn't, but I could. And I said, but you could. And that's the crux of the whole issue. He could. If you give one person, one man or a woman, can't forget the ladies, absolute power is absolutely wrong. In the old days, there was an era called the master-servant era, when the boss was king. It was his way or the highway. We don't need that in Lowell. We don't need Ebenezer Scrooge coming to Lowell. You always need 2 chairs at the table, and actually, we'd like to see 3 chairs at the table. We'd like to see the retirees having a chair. If it affects us, we should have a voice. A couple of minutes later, I asked the manager one more question, and I said, would you be willing, if you get plan design, would you be willing to grandfather the retirees, the current retirees? Notice I said current, so that's a diminishing number. It won't go up, it'll always go down, because unfortunately, we die. And he didn't hesitate. He didn't say, well, I'll think about it. We can negotiate it. I'll run it by the councilors. He said flat out, no. And a few minutes later, he made an announcement, and in the future, any meetings with the unions, the retirees would be excluded. So much for respect. As I've stated before, I sent you a letter once before, back in July, I believe. Most retirees have toiled for the city of Lowell for 3, 4, and even 5 decades for the city of Lowell. We helped build this city. We've serviced the city. We've protected the city, and we've educated the city. But yet we're the most vulnerable people in the city. We're on fixed incomes, we have increasing health problems, and we have no voice at the table. We're real people and we're reasonable people. We'd like to see some respect and see the home rule petition withdrawn. Now, every couple of years, most of you city councilors will run for re-election. And a lot of you like to say you've been friends of labor, and you have been. But how can you say you're friends of labor if you vote to abolish collective bargaining? I don't know. One more page. We're getting there. Before I finish up, I'd like to acknowledge a couple of councilors after reading the minutes of the July 13th City Council meeting. That was the one that you voted on the home rule petition. Councilors Caulfield and Dakota voiced some concern about the retirees, and I wish to thank them for not excluding us in their thoughts. And a big thank you goes to Councilor Patrick Murphy for being the lone voice against the home rule petition. Thank you for the respect. You won't be forgotten. Finally, my words are to the city manager, and I hope you don't take anything personally. I believe you're an honorable person and an intelligent person. But when it comes to retirees, you are totally, extremely disrespectful and not compassionate to our needs. You want to get rid of Master Medical. You won't allow us to attend union meetings. You won't grandfather us. And you just sent the proposal just recently to the unions to bargain under Mass General Law 150E, which leaves the retirees completely out of the dialogue. If it affects us, we should have a voice. If this was a baseball game, you'd be batting 0 for 4. In The Wizard of Oz, there was a character called the Tin Man. The Tin Man was the person without a heart. Mr. Manager, don't be the Tin Man. Have a heart, negotiate with the unions, negotiate with the retirees, and please, please, show us some respect. Don't dictate to us. That's all I have to say. Thank you and good night.
Tom Flynn, 39 Waterford Street.
You don't have to grandfather me, I'm already a grandfather. As you say, I'm Tom Flynn, 39 Waterford Street. My wife and I are taxpayers and have lived in Lowell all our lives. I am more than a little disappointed in the actions of my fellow Lowellians on the City Council. During my 37 years working in the Lowell school system, I have suffered assault, battery, and damage to personal property on a number of occasions. And my job was not nearly as dangerous as the jobs of the retirees of the police and fire departments. This is the thanks we get. Now, at a time when the best health insurance is absolutely necessary for everyone, you have voted to put our health insurance and therefore our health care in jeopardy. Would you name a stranger that did not have your best interest at heart to be your health care proxy? Well, that is what you've done to us. Will the do not resuscitate order be next? The Home Rule petition abrogates the protections that current employees have under Massachusetts law. As retirees, we basically have no rights. According to a newspaper article, the city manager has said that because some retirees in private sector have no insurance, neither should we. Quote, if there are cuts that have to be made, the groups resistant to making changes that save money should bear the burden. This is only fair, said the manager. Fair? Yes, we should all be as silent as the lambs. How dare we resist? Where do we think we are? America? I want to thank Councilor Murphy for his previous vote and his motion tonight. City councils and city managers in the past have seen fit to support health insurance for retirees. We are asking for you to continue this practice and withdraw your home rule petition. Thank you for your time.
Dorothy Flanagan, 67 Varnum Street.
Good evening, Mayor Milanazzo, City Councilors, City Manager Lynch. My name is Dorothy Flanagan, 67 Varnum Street, Lowell. I was a teacher in Lowell for 34 years. This evening, I am representing members of the Retired Educators Association of Massachusetts and also President John Hassan, who himself was a retired Lowell teacher. The health insurance benefits that all municipal employees have been part of collective bargaining since the collective bargaining law went into effect. However, retirees are not represented by collective bargaining. The collective bargaining law allows employees to bargain for salaries and health insurance. This home rule petition will take health insurance out of the bargaining process, which is a violation of the collective bargaining law 150B. During the last 45 years, employees have given up pay raises or taken smaller raises in order to get this benefit. Some of our retirees are in their 70s, 80s, and 90s and do not qualify for Social Security. They do not have Medicare. Blue Cross Blue Shield is their only insurance. Most of these former employees have given 30 to 40 years of dedicated service to this city. Please, please, please recall this home rule petition. Thank you.
Bruce Thomas, 66 Havilah Street.
I was tripped over. Are you okay? This is a huge crowd, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bruce Thomas, 66 Havilah Street, and I'm a little bit too tall for this podium here. Can everyone hear me without this? All right.
The TV won't be able to pick you up. The TV, unless you speak into the microphone.
Okay.
It's up to you if you want to be heard on the TV.
I've been an educator in the town of Chelmsford for close to 40 years. I'm on my wife's plan in Lowell. She's been an educator for almost as long. I have a little bit different role here tonight. I was the teacher union president in Chelmsford in the mid-2000s, and we were going through a similar struggle with health insurance in Chelmsford. And Mr. Lynch made a claim on the radio about a week and a half ago that he worked very well with the Chelmsford unions, especially with this bargaining, informal bargaining as he called it. However, I beg to differ. In 2006, I was approached. I was the co-chair of the Insurance Advisory Committee. A retiree approached me, and he told me he's being overcharged. I said, I said, this can't be, because we have an agreement, I explained. Mr. Lynch signed the unions to an agreement, memorandum of understanding, whereby the retirees would not be charged any higher a rate than the current employees. And I said, Don, Mr. Stevens was his name, I said, are you sure? He swore up and down. Well, this has not come before the Labor Commission yet. It comes up in December. But I have in my hands a document which I filed on behalf of the Chelmsford Federation of Teachers, alleging that the town of Chelmsford, through Mr. Lynch, overcharged the retirees in direct opposition to a memorandum of understanding that he signed along with the other union heads. I also have a magazine article from a magazine called Retirees United, Mass Retirees United, which references this memorandum and also says that this is an unusual case because it's one of the first cases they have heard of an understanding, written document being contravened. The point I'm trying to make right now is similar to a point that some other
Mr. Thomas,
people...
I'm being advised that you're going way off track here. You have to speak to the
The point I'm
motion.
trying to make is, it is dangerous putting so much power into the hands of one individual. I'm upset that this body... I'm upset that this body right here, if I recall, Mr. Murphy was very concerned, Mr. Caulfield was concerned about the retirees. Mr. Caulfield said, are you going to meet with them? Are you going to inform them? From what I can see with the Insurance Advisory Committee in Lowell, Mr. Lynch has not attended many meetings at all. I can't understand that. I know Mr. Caulfield, very concerned. If I'm missing one other person, I did read the notes. I'm very concerned that this body is not living up to its obligation. Please fix this travesty. Thank you.
Linda Dano, 29 Christian Ave in Tingsboro.
Hello, my name is Linda Dano. I'm also known as Linda Dano Lavery. I taught in Lowell for 36 years. I retired under the city's or the state's early retirement option when I was only 57 years old. I am now 61. My first year was wonderful, having no bells. My second year, I missed teaching so much that I went back full-time as a substitute at the Stuck Closer School, which I absolutely loved. Unfortunately, things took a drastic change from then. Bear with me. When I found out I had to give my name last night, I called Mickey and said, I don't think I can do it. I'm just too personal. I couldn't sleep because I knew I had to tell you what happened to me because it can happen to you. Okay? Okay, here you go. First, let me thank you for allowing me to speak to you. I felt you needed to consider a real person needing Master Medical as part of your making a health insurance decision for Lowell employees now and in the future. I taught in Lowell from the age of 21 until shortly after my 57th birthday, at which time I retired under the early retirement option offered to us. Being only 57, medical coverage was a large concern, since I wouldn't even be eligible for Medicare for 8 years. Unfortunately, in January of 2008, as a non-smoker, I was diagnosed with stage 4 inoperable non-small cell lung cancer at Mass General Hospital after being grossly misdiagnosed at a local Lowell hospital. My tumor was so advanced that when I asked how long I could expect to live, I was told from 2 weeks to 6 months. The average prognosis for stage 4 non-small cell lung cancer is 1 year. Obviously, at age 61 now, it is unlikely I will ever see Medicare. But soon, I will be celebrating my 3rd year. No one knows why. I am an anomaly. But I do know that it is largely due to my state-of-the-art, highly aggressive, selective personal treatment at Mass General Hospital. This was made possible because I have master medical health coverage. And I have had a fantastic 3 years. I have seen my oldest son get married. I have designed their hoopah and made it for them. I have seen both my son and my daughter-in-law receiving their doctorate. I have seen my youngest son recover from an illness. Each day continues to be a gift, and my cup remains half full. Life is good. Before this city drops Master Medical or raises the price so high employees can no longer afford it, please consider these facts as broadcast on WCVB TV featuring Dr. Jeffrey Adam Engelman, my doctor, March 23rd, 22, before opting out of Master Medical. Number 1, 60% of all new lung cancer patients are non-smokers. Number 2, most lung cancers are diagnosed when they're already so advanced, there's no pre-screening protocol. Number 3, this is important for Lowell teachers, lung cancer is becoming an epidemic amongst non-smoking women under 40, your constituency. 85% of lung cancer patients do not survive. The mortality rate has not changed in 40 years. Lung cancer is the deadliest of all enemies for both women and men. This is the letter my doctor, Jeffrey Adam Engelman, one of the leading United States oncologist researchers in the United States, wrote for me to read to you tonight in support of this. The treatment I am receiving under Master Medical has allowed me to defy the odds above with a surprisingly high quality of life. Bear with me. This is his letter. He's just great. November 11th, 2010. To whom it may concern. I have provided care for Miss Linda Dano for her advanced lung cancer for almost 3 years. She has been doing extraordinarily well, and with her current regimen of chemotherapy and treatment course, I believe that the treatment continues to be warranted and is necessary for her cancer. I know that she expressed concern about losing Master Medical coverage. Although I don't truly understand all of the ramifications, I do believe that she continues to require this substantial care for her condition. Please let me know if I can provide any further clarifications. Sincerely, Dr. Jeffrey Engelman, Director, Center of Thoracic Cancers, Division of Hematology and Oncology, Mass General Hospital, Professor of Medicine, Harvard Medical School. Further, because, and I had to fight for it, I have Master Medical. I also qualify for what is called prolonged chronic illness. For some crazy reason, Blue Cross calls it PIC. It shouldn't be that, it should be PCI, but they call it PIC. This repays me my 20% of my prescription drugs, which averages me about $250 a month, but now since I'm more advanced, is rising every month. You can find out the only way that you can find out your true benefits is by registering with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts with your card and printing them out. No plan comes near Master Medical. And someday, unexpectedly, like me, you might need these. Your daughters might need these. Just to survive. Not just physically, but financially. In conclusion, I now must read you another recently written letter from Mass General needed to renew my PIC benefits for 2011. As you are aware, I know I will keep my benefits until June 1st of 2011. However, it is very unlikely I will be here in June of 2011. Okay? So this is for you. Uh-oh. I got it. PIC, prolonged chronic illness. To whom it may concern, October 1st, 2010. Because it took me 4 months to get Blue Cross Blue Shield to approve me last year for PIC. And the year before, they didn't. Linda Dano is currently receiving treatment for metastatic lung cancer at Massachusetts General Hospital under the direction of Dr. Jeffrey Adam Engelman. Ms. Dano was initially diagnosed with non-small cell lung cancer in October of 2007, found to be metastatic, and began treatment here in January of 2008. Unfortunately, stage 4 disease is not curable and carries with it a very limited life expectancy. Since January of 2008, Ms. Dano has received several lines of chemotherapy to try and keep her disease stable to achieve the best quality of life possible. She is seen in clinic every 3 weeks for receipt of ongoing chemotherapy. She has experienced numerous side effects from her treatment and disease, which have impacted her daily activities, but she does the best she can to cope with her terminal illness. Dr. Kimberly Anderson Lewis. Okay. Now, the reason I say that isn't for me. No one knows why I am still here. I am an anomaly. But I like to think that God has kept me alive as long as I can help others here on earth and still tolerate this all-consuming, painful family disease. As you know, now it is very unlikely I will be here June 1st. But if even one of you gets the benefits of Boston area-based, world-acclaimed cancer treatment currently available to you through Master Medical, that may be one of the reasons why I am still here. And it is definitely the reason I am speaking to you here tonight. My oldest son, when I told him yesterday, I didn't know because I'm so private. And I found out I had to say my name if I could speak. He said to me, "Mom, you know how you're always saying
You don't know why you're still alive. Maybe this is the reason why. Maybe someone will change to Master Medical. Or maybe somebody will go to Mass General. I raised my sons not to turn from their fears, but to face them. I fear you, Mr. Lynch, and I am going to face you. And what I want you to know is that what has happened to me can happen to any one of us. I have provided to my union for their full use a complete printout of all of my benefits and what I need to survive for their use. I have provided to them my doctor's letters and the cost of my medications every month. This is for their full use. In conclusion, I gave the city, gratefully, 36 years of my life. I was in Who's Who in American Teachers twice. If anyone is to address retired teachers of Lowell, I guess it had to be me, because I taught at the Laura Lee, the Joseph G. Pine, the Greenhalgh. I was one of the original founders of the original City Magnet School and worked at the trailer with Pat Mogan. I also worked at my beloved daily school, from which I retired with my colleagues in April of 2006, with a total of 349 years between us. How can you do this to us? I also taught at the University of Lowell, and some of your teachers are now representative of that training. God bless you all. And if you don't have Master Medical, and some of you I just found out recently don't, and if this is still the board, please change. Because financially, this would have cost me at this point millions of dollars. I have given Paul the printout, okay, of what has been covered. You can't afford it. On a personal basis, what has it done to me? As soon as I found out that this was an issue, and as soon as I found out, as much as my sons and my former husband, Jerry Lavery, who's my best friend, found out that there was a chance that the fees would be doubled, and then there was a chance that we wouldn't have this coverage, I made the decision to put my house on the market. And so it does have a personal connection, okay? That's how personal this can be. But with Master Medical, you are not going to have a financial burden. It is incredible. Please. Thank you.
Margaret Farrell, 39 East Scotty Hollow Drive in North Chelmsford.
First of all, I think we all need to breathe after Linda. My name is Margaret Farrell. I live at Scotty Hollow in North Chelmsford. I am a City of Lowell retired teacher. I'm speaking tonight for all of the City of Lowell retired teachers. I also would like to thank Councilor Patrick Murphy for putting this motion on the agenda. I see some irony here, Councilor Murphy. You being the youngest is giving me the courage to speak as an elder tonight. Thank you, Councilor. My message is simply this. City Manager Lynch, City Councilors, for all the many years, many years, the retired teachers have served the city of Lowell. We deserve a voice. It's expected. Do the right thing. It's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Gertrude Bailey, 1303 Lawrence Street.
Good evening. My name is Gertrude M. Bailey. I'm a retired educator of the Lowell school system. I taught for 14 years at the Bartlett School and served as principal of the Lincoln School for 22 years. I am here to ask you not to vote to give the manager of Lowell the sole power to decide the health insurance plan for employees and retirees of Lowell. As I told you in my letter, I have been worried about this since Manager Lynch was hired because he made it known from the beginning that he planned to cut health insurance. Now, after reading his quotes and the recent reports in the Lowell Sun, I'm starting to panic. I fear if you allow this change, it will lead to other unilateral decisions on this manager or managers of the future. There was a hint of what could come when the newspaper quoted Manager Lynch as saying, "Most businesses do not provide medical insurance to their retirees. Please do not let this happen." I began teaching in 1948 and retired in 1987. During my entire career, there was no opportunity to contribute to the National Social Security retirement system because Massachusetts had its own retirement system. When the United States instituted the Medicare plan to provide medical coverage for the elderly in the 60s, it attached it to the Social Security system. And as you probably know, unless you or your spouse collects Social Security, you cannot partake in the Medicare program. Therefore, the bottom line is that I have only the medical coverage, which by law I acquire through the Lowell school system. Of course, this affects me personally. After 39 years of service, I had more than 30 years of perfect attendance, indicating excellent health and dedication. Now, at age 84, I have more serious health issues, so I need the best insurance that I can get. And for me right now, it's to continue the Master Medical Plan, which has been available to me through bargaining process for about 40 years. When I retired in 1987, salaries were low, so now my retirement is based on the salary scale of 24 years ago, as many retirees could say. With my simple lifestyle and adequate master medical plan, I'm doing okay. But if my health insurance is cut, my medical fees will increase and of services will diminish, and I will certainly be in a financial bind. The plans suggested by the manager may cost less to buy, but many of the services which I require now will either not be covered or will cost me much more. I, too, am a taxpayer of Lowell, and I can understand the concerns of today. But this is not the time in my life to take away the security that I have built over many years of bargaining away salary increases and other benefits in favor of adequate medical coverage. I thank you for this opportunity to speak. I thank you for the work that you do and the responsibility you bear for the people of Lowell. I ask that you give serious thought to your vote on this issue and the effect it will have on a voiceless group of individuals who have given their all to the city of Lowell.
James Malloy, 138 Parker Street.
Cheat a little bit, get my glasses on here, too. Good evening, Mayor Milanazzo and members of the City Council. I am James Malloy. I chair the Insurance Advisory Committee. I am here tonight to urge you to rescind your vote, which asks the legislature to grant the manager the power to unilaterally design the city's health insurance plan. This option has the potential to cause great harm to city retirees. As you are well aware, the city is self-insured with claims against the Insurance Trust Fund being administered by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts. The only way the city can lower the cost of health insurance is cost shifting, the practice of shifting the cost to employees and retirees. There are two ways this can be done. One is the elimination of Blue Cross Blue Shield Master Medical carve-out plan for the Medicare-eligible retirees, which at present leaves them only two other options, both of them unacceptable. A would be to manage Blue Care for seniors, will dramatically raise co-payments. I believe that this will result in some retirees going without their needed and in some cases life-preserving medicines. B, medics, similar to Blue Cross Blue Shield carve-outs A and B, that this has a $50 a year deductible on each prescription filled at a designated retail pharmacy. I don't have to tell you, if you have 7 of those, that's $350 in deductibles. Both Cook and Company and Blue Cross Blue Shield representatives stated at the last Insurance Advisory Committee meeting that the MedX option would not save the city a dime. It should be noted that Medicare has reimbursed the city over $3 million since January of '06. This is based on a percent of expenditures on prescriptions by the Insurance Trust Fund for eligible Medicare retirees. This is over $600 per eligible member. Although retirees' share of the expenditure was 25%, all reimbursements are made to the general fund, and there is no transfer from the general fund to the Insurance Trust Fund. Second, The only other cost-shifting option under which the city can save a few dollars is to change the 75-25 ratio to 50-50. With many retirees near or below the poverty level, this would most surely result in many retirees being forced to drop their Medicare supplement and coverage. I think if this should happen, it could result in the premature demise of many retirees. In summation, if you give the manager sole responsibility for health insurance, I charge you that you'll be signing the death warrant for many retirees. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Keith Rudy. See out there.
Is Keith out in the hallway by any chance, Paul? I don't see him. No, okay. We'll go on to the next.
Richard Galliero, 505 Arlington Street, Drake.
Members of the City Council, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Manager, my name is Richard Galliero. I'm a retired Lowell firefighter and president of the Lowell Retired Firefighters Association. The retired firefighters and other city retirees have given much to the city. Many have worked 30 and in some cases over 40 years for Lowell, and during their years as active workers, they were asked numerous times to make, during contract negotiations, sacrifices because of the economic climate at the time. They gave up raises, benefits, so that their families had good, dependable, and affordable health insurance. Numerous articles in the Lowell Sun praised the city workers for making difficult decisions during difficult times. These same people are now at a time in their lives when, as retirees, they are very dependent on the city-provided health insurance. They do not have the right to negotiate or bargain for this benefit because they are retired. The City of Lowell retirees now ask you, the City Council, to remember those times they made these concessions for the betterment of the city and for their dedication to the citizens of Lowell. In reference to the motion made by Councilor Murphy, we ask that you give them the benefit of your vote just as you asked for theirs. Thank you.
Mary Ann Dumont, 62 Winwood Road.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to this issue tonight. My name is Mary Ann Dumont, and I live at 62 Winwood Road in Lowell. I am a retired Lowell public school teacher. Here's some of what I've learned since the City Council first voted on the Home Rule petition on July 13th. The legislature first gave cities and towns the authority to provide health insurance coverage to public employees in the 1950s. Decades ago, the legislature also linked health care and pension benefits. Any city or town employee who qualified for a pension also qualified for health care coverage. Over time, and as health coverage benefits have risen dramatically all across this country, consuming larger and larger percentages of municipality and state budgets, bargaining units have discovered that health insurance benefits have become more and more intertwined with the collective bargaining process. In more recent city contracts, agreements have been reached that have prompted employees to forego pay increases in order to maintain adequate health coverage. Do any of you know exactly how much in savings was realized by this city because of the school-side collective bargaining that opened up the PPO plan? More than 60% of active school employees moved to lower-cost plans over the last 3 years. I don't believe the savings generated by this negotiation has ever been acknowledged. Agreements that are and have been reached apply to workers not only while they are employed, but when they are retired as well. Many of the retirees in this room tonight, including myself, have made some very important life decisions. Retirement, for example, based on the reasonable assurance and expectation that what we worked for and towards for the better part of our lives would not be changed or redesigned after retirement. Especially without any input from us. The Home Rule petition specifically states that the intent is to totally eliminate collective bargaining from the negotiation of health care policies for employees, retirees, and dependents. The Home Rule petition also makes reference to authorizing the city to perhaps participate in or join the state's Group Insurance Commission, most popularly known as the GIC. I have learned that the GIC is not the end-all be-all for lowering health care costs, and our management and labor groups could negotiate just as well with Blue Cross Blue Shield at any time. Our Insurance Advisory Committee, made up of members from all unions, including retirees, meets regularly but often meets without the presence or support of the city manager. On July 13th, at least 2 city councilors, thank you, asked if the city manager would meet with retirees and explain to them the different available options and provide them with reasonable options that they'd be satisfied with. The manager's response at that time was, and I quote, "Absolutely, absolutely." It's been just over 4 months since that meeting, and I don't believe any retirees have heard from anyone in the city manager's office regarding available plans and options. Education of available plans needs to take place. Until that occurs, I would strongly urge this city council to withdraw their vote, if that's possible, to support a home rule petition on this issue. It is blatantly unfair to strip some of our taxpayers of the rights, the choices that they fought so hard for, without first meeting them halfway at the bargaining table. We, retirees, active employees, are reasonable, fair taxpayers who are very aware that change, along with choice, must come in order to help everyone. But we'd honestly prefer to do this the way we always have, together, with purpose and with resolve that no one among us will be hurt or crippled by any changes that ensue. That's what public sector members do for one another. The manager has said that he does not have anything to offer us retirees in exchange for health insurance concessions. He claims that retirees cannot gain anything in the process. I must respectfully disagree. The gain retirees would expect from the bargaining process is the peace of mind that comes to us from a coalition collective bargaining negotiation that continues to give retirees a voice in a process that protects us from being left out in the cold, like what can sometimes happen to private sector taxpayers. I implore you, city councilors, to please rescind your vote of July 13th until such time as good faith efforts are made by both labor and management towards a workable and acceptable resolution in addressing the health care crisis on the table. It is the fair thing to do. In closing, people say there's a lot to like about Lowell. We don't want them to add that retiring from Lowell could be very bad for your health. Thank you.
Mary Sweeney, 37 Dan Cause Road.
I'm Mary Sweeney from 37 Dan Cross Road in Lowell, and I've been a home-owning taxpayer since before a lot of you were born. I taught in the city of Lowell for 41 years, loved every minute of it. My husband taught for 36 years, he loved every minute of it. And all the time we were teaching, we never thought to say something that I heard one of the counselors say in July, enough is enough. Since retiring, I've been retired since 1993. I have developed macular degeneration to the point where I am now legally blind. I've survived 3 attacks of congestive heart failure, and my doctor says, you've outlived more other people who would have died at least 3 times on some of these things. And I have had Master Medical, and that has taken care of me. Now, like Linda, I don't know when God is going to say enough is enough, but evidently I still have a few things left to do. And one of them is to hope that you will follow through on some logical thought that I think you're forgetting. Last time you had a meeting, I believe it was last time, you voted to allow 17-year-olders to vote in the city election. Good. But in July, you voted to disenfranchise all of us retirees from being able to say anything here. So if you're going to vote in 17-year-olders, then that's good. Vote us back in so that we can have a seat at the table to be able to keep our health insurance, to keep us going as long as God wants us to. Thank you.
All Georges, United Teachers of Lowell.
You folks are awful hard to follow, I'll tell you. And thank you for all being here and supporting each other. You know, I just want to put this in context. Last July 13th, I had just come back from a convention out in Seattle with the American Federation of Teachers. I was sitting in my office on a Tuesday, late afternoon, around 5 o'clock, meeting with a number of teachers on a bunch of different issues. The teacher that was in front of me was a teacher who is critically ill, who is fighting for his life. And I looked down at the paper in Monday's paper, because there was a few days worth of papers for me to look through, and it said that the city council would be considering a motion made by, or a proposal made by, the city manager to adopt a home rule petition. First I heard of it. First any union person heard about it at least from my knowledge. I came and spoke on that. If you remember right, this was a torture chamber. It was about 90 degrees in here, and I didn't speak until probably 10 o'clock when the meeting started at 6:30. And I talked about the unfairness of not having a public hearing so that at least you would be informed about the impact this could have on all teachers and other city union employees, both active and retired. And the answers I got, as far as I was concerned, were not particularly sensitive to the idea that a lot of people relied on their health insurance, particularly Master Medical, and particularly the most critically ill people that we have that either have served in this community or continue to serve now. That was July 13th. I left that meeting, and 4 days later, I got a letter in the mail, signed by the city manager informing me that what was going to happen on the 13th. The letter's dated the 13th. The envelope was postmarked the 15th. I suspect there probably wasn't a lot of attention to try to get me here or get other union leaders to come here and talk about the issue.
Please, Paul, stay on the issue, please.
Okay, I'm just...
Please.
The fact of the matter is, when I spoke that night, I don't speak about for me. I speak for the people who have worked hard in this community. There seems to be a perception out there, and I understand all the common, sort of discussion about this, or the rhetoric, or sort of the verbiage about the Master Medical being a Cadillac and we can't afford it and so on. Let me tell you something that we did practically. 3.5 years ago, a union proposal made by the United Teachers of Lowell was to include 2 other plans, a PPO and an HMO, with certain stipulations and arrangements. And there would be some benefit as far as coming back to the union if a certain threshold were reached for people utilizing that choice. And we said we would bring in Boston Benefit Partners and educate our members so that they could make an informed choice. But beyond that, there was no other stipulation. We didn't need to continue that process, but we did it on our own. We brought in Boston Benefit Partners. In fact, last year, I asked the city manager to extend the open enrollment period a couple of weeks, and he did so that we had a greater opportunity to educate our active members on the school department side about health insurance options so that whatever they chose is the one that was best for them. That enrollment went from nearly 100% participation in Master Medical 3 years ago to 37% today. That's a market decrease. The savings on the school department side this year, and I've conferred with Jay Lang on these numbers and looked at the enrollment, is now for this year alone on the school department side almost $3.5 million. That wasn't done by mandating anything. That wasn't done by holding a gun to someone's head and saying, you must. It wasn't done because we were going to benefit personally in our pocket. It was done because it was the right thing to do. And we did it, and we've saved jobs, and we've saved services to kids. But the focus is always on the 37% that haven't complied. Complied because we have an implicit demand by the city manager to eliminate one option. I've heard all of you say, you like your plan. I even heard the city manager a few weeks ago when you gave him a contract extension and a reasonable a salary increase, indicate that he would give up his option of Master Medical as part of an exchange for salary increases for himself. Thank God the unions held on to Master Medical or he wouldn't have the bargaining chip. What we committed to 3.5 years ago. Mr. Martin was mayor at the time. City manager was at the bargaining table with the school committee. We came to a gentleman's agreement that our members would have the option of 3 plans. And we've made substantial savings. I think the cumulative savings over the 3-year period perhaps could be $6-7 million. But we did it not by abandoning something we believed in, but by being pragmatic and trying to find a solution. In our schools today, we have some of the best things that are happening in the state when it comes to the collaborative work that's going on at the schools, where everyone at the table finds a solution to a problem, where everybody's committed to find a solution. Collective bargaining's been, for health insurance, has been around since the early, 50s, and then the 60s were the greatest jump into collective bargaining. The city and the school department are going to be looking for cooperation from its employees to get through the next few years. Holding a gun to our head with a home rule petition that would give unilateral, single authority to one individual to impact a component of our compensation so important like health insurance is not the way to get that cooperation. Of our own volition, we have saved considerable amount of money. I think retirees deserve the respect. I know you are hardworking people and dealing with dilemmas every day. The budgetary restraints, everyone is aware of. But I think some of the speakers who spoke today spoke about how Master Medical, in their case, is the lifeline that keeps them going. Preserving choice for our employees is the right thing to do. Preserving this as a collective bargaining issue is the right thing to do. We can solve more problems working together. But we can spend our energy either trying to solve problems or we can spend our energy in combat. We are not afraid to do either. I'm asking you to withdraw the home rule petition, or at the very least, I ask you to withdraw the home rule petition. It's not the right way to go in a time when we are going to have such substantial issues we have to deal with together. But things like And I want to make sure the city manager has proposed a certain kind of coalition bargaining that doesn't really exist in state law. 32B, Section 19 coalition bargaining requires that all the unions act as one, including representation by retirees. The proposal that's out there under his brand of coalition bargaining, which is, again, is a hybrid, under 150 is that every union would have one vote regardless of size, and retirees would have no place at the table. That means a union with 5 or 6 people in it would what? Have the same position as a union with 1,500? Or 5 unions with 10 people would have 5 times as much influence as a union with 1,500? And preclude the retirees' participation? It's simple. That proposal, we know very clearly, we will enter in any conversation anytime the city manager wants about health insurance. We've been doing it for 18, 19 years through the Insurance Advisory Group. City manager has chosen to come to 3 in the last 4 years. That's the place where we could have had these discussions. But at this point, all I'm asking you is withdraw the home rule petition. The coalition bargaining has to include retirees if that's going to be the way to go. It has to include a proportional vote for it to be legitimate. And I'm asking you to support the retirees that you see around you that are here today and your active employees. And don't put us in a position where our energy is in conflict rather than in trying to find pragmatic solutions to problems that we all face in the very near future. Thank you very much for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Georges, and thank you to all of the speakers. What's the wish of the council at this point? On the motion? Councilor Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am going to speak on this subject. Maybe I should keep quiet, but you know that's not me. And I do want to say that I always thought that Paul Georges was one of the greatest speakers that I ever heard, but that changed today when I heard Linda Dano. She did the best that I ever heard because she spoke from the heart. And when this motion came before us some time ago, I supported it, and I supported it because I felt that, and I don't want to separate city side from school side, but let me just say why I voted the way that I did. I voted for it because it seemed like the manager had the bargaining tool to the city side to speak to the different unions to say that, would you support, he had the right to offer to take an HMO or a PPO, but on the school side with the state, people under the state as teachers in that particular union and the retirees, that he didn't have that tool. He had to go through a home rule petition to allow that to take place. So having said that, I felt that that was not fair, that he should have the right to negotiate and say, could I offer the fact that you have the right to take a PPO or an HMO to save the city money? And that is our ultimate goal sitting here, to try to save some money. And having heard that, my colleague, Councilor Caulfield, said, what about our retirees? I think Councilor Dakota said that as well. What about the retirees? What are their choices? Will they have a say? And the answer was absolutely. And having said that, there was no need for me to say any further, because I remember that my husband was a retiree, and I would want to support and defend a retiree. I mean, and I don't really want you to clap, because the word sometimes is pandering, and I'm not here to pander anybody. I'm here to speak the truth and say the truth. And I feel that if it was like the 11th hour, there wasn't much time to request a public hearing, because I think if I had heard the people speak as to what really is taking place, then I don't believe that I would have supported this home rule petition. And that's not the motion before us. The motion before us isn't even that. The motion isn't saying that we thought that you were wronged, or we want to rescind a vote or withdraw a vote. That's not what's before us. In fact, the maker of the motion can tell you what the actual reading of the motion is, and that is to present it, that home rule petition and that vote that we took, to see what is the strategy, how are you going to handle this. Having said that, that leaves it on the table and still the way that it is. But I just want to say that maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't try to make a decision based on, am I right, am I wrong? I based my decisions on what is fair. What is fair for you is fair for me. What's fair for me is fair for you. And having said that, I just want to say that we didn't learn at that time that 37% of the teachers opted to save $3.5 million to take 67 to take an HMO. See, they are teachers. They do correct me. But they do, I mean, we didn't know that. I didn't know that, and saved all that money. I didn't know that. Nobody told me that they considered the other two options. And I did say that I had a GIC. I have Tufts Navigator, and to me, it's okay right now. God forbid should I get older and sicker and need a better insurance, I don't think that I will have it. But you know what happened here along the way? Along the way, contracts were negotiated, people gave something and gained something. And people that worked 35 years in the system should not have to retire and have the rug pulled out of them. I don't think... And I'm not saying it for that. I really don't give a darn. I just say what I think is fair. And I want to bring you up to something that we're going to discuss further on in this budget that brings an equal setting to this, because I questioned it. There's a vote tonight, later on tonight, probably around midnight, I guess, but it will be saying there's a vote to provide wreaths and baskets and cut flowers, etc., for gravesite lot owners who paid for these services. And I said, well, isn't that perpetual care? Don't I have perpetual care? Now, I thought perpetual care was cutting the grass, trimming the trees. You know, I didn't think it was putting a wreath or a basket or cut flowers on somebody's grave. I don't understand that. So I called up to find out about this vote that we're going to take. And about 75 years ago, or longer than that, people paid $1,500, which was a lot of money at that time, to provide services for their family graves. Now, they're probably all dead, but we have to provide this service. And I'm thinking about people that we made a commitment years ago to provide something that I don't want to take away from someone because it was negotiated there. Unless you want to give up something and rework it, then I don't know that I want to just pull the rug out. But having said that, I think that what is fair, and you don't do something like that at the 11th hour, and I just can't seem to grasp the fact that we didn't have all this information before. So I don't know if my colleagues want to talk about rescinding the vote, but I'm wondering. And you know what would be fair? You know what would be fair? If we set a policy that new hires coming into the city, whether it be police or fire or those coming into the city, will not get Master Medical. They will have an option of a GIC, PPO, HMO, but no Master Medical, because if you want the job, this is the option. But I can't. I think I made a mistake because I didn't have all the facts, and I'm going to honestly say that, and I would be willing. I don't know You know, I'm not gonna have people retire and go out the door and then snap this away from, I think that's wrong. I really think it's wrong. I was under a different perspective when I voted for that.
Thank you, Councilor Mercia. Councilor Caulfield?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I suppose this is what the council meetings are about. Democracy is all about, allowing people to go to that podium and offer their views. I want to thank everyone who participated here this evening, and that is democracy. I just want to talk about one tremendous school teacher, Gertrude Bailey. Very humble, very compassionate. And we all do know that the Bailey School, that great school in the Highlands, was named after Gertrude Bailey. When she was the principal at the Lincoln School, I know this for a fact, because I had nephews and nieces who attended that school. She was more than a principal. She gave mittens and boots and coats and hats, and you name it, Mr. Mayor. She was more than just a principal. She was a giver, a compassionate human being. And Gertrude Bailey, thank you for your dedicated service all these years. I remember that evening very, very well. And I did ask the manager, because I did receive phone calls, and many of those retirees I know. And I asked the manager, Mr. Manager, what about the retirees? Are they going to have a say? Are you going to meet with those retirees? And Mr. Manager, it's very obvious that never happened. And as Joe Kennedy would say in his commercial, Delivering Oil, no one should be left out in the cold. And retirees, as far as I'm concerned, they do deserve a place at the table. Now, I've been an advocate for years. The health cost is climbing every single year. I believe in 1999, the health care cost was $13 million. It's now $33 million. It's in that range, isn't it, Mr. Manager? $39 million. As the mayor and mayors before me have all attended retirement parties, especially the teachers, 30 and 40 at a time. And every mayor, including me, all wish those retirees the best, good health, and good speed. And I've told you this before, Mr. Manager, they should retire with what they had and let them continue to live good health and God. I don't know where this is going. Councilor Murphy, you presented the motion. But as many retirees went to that podium, I listened intently. I'm a retiree. And if I didn't have health insurance, my wife was hospitalized last week, Mass General. I've been at Mass General, and the HMO Blue plan that I have is excellent, absolutely phenomenal. These retirees retired with Master Medical, or some of them didn't have Master Medical. But they should have a say, Mr. Manager. We just can't cast them off and say, you know what, thanks for your service, but what can you do for me now? That's not the way to treat people. So, Councilor Murphy, I'll listen to your motion and see where you're going with it. Thank you.
Again, if I could, just let me read the motion again. It's requested the manager report on the implementation of health care plan design in practice and establish guidelines with council for use of potential authority. That's the motion that's before us. So again, continuing the discussion. Anyone else want to be heard in the motion? Mr. Manager?
If I may, Mr. Mayor and members of the council and to the people in attendance, let me say at the outset, I have the highest respect for, contrary to a comment that was made earlier, I have the highest respect for retirees. You were all good public employees, and I happen to be a public employee myself. I anticipate, after having been in this business for about 30 years, that I will be retiring soon. Probably not soon enough. For all of us. But let me correct a few things, and then let me make a few comments regarding our proposal. First off, I believe it was the first or second speaker asked me to not be the Tin Man, to have a heart. I do have a heart, very much. I got into this business because I had a heart, and I saw a need for government to do things for people. We have 13,500 students in this city that need to have teachers in the classroom. I don't know if I know some of you were here earlier that had to listen to the school committee and the city council members and myself talk about how bad next year is going to be. We're looking at probably a 10 million, maybe a 15 million. I don't even know, given what the state aid is going to do, how big a cut there's going to have to be next year. That means there's going to be fewer teachers in the classroom. That means those students are going to lose out. That means they're not going to have the opportunities that the people before them had. They've had to lose out each and every one of the last several years with not having people, not having books, not having the services. We have 105,000 people in the city that need police protection, fire protection. They need to have an active health department. They need to have a good library. They need to have streets to drive on. They're entitled to all of those things. So I do have a heart. I have a heart for all of the people out there that need services and our ability to provide those services. I also have a heart for retirees. I have a heart for all public employees. I know I go to the bargaining table and meet with Paul Georges and meet with Keith Rudy and meet with Tom Conlon and Dave Keene and so on with all the union representatives, and I take a hard line. That's my job. My job is to make sure that the city's residents get the services they deserve, and it's my job to make sure that the tax dollars that they pay are as minimal as possible for those services, because we can't make the city unaffordable. But we have to make sure we have the services. So I do take that hard line, and but at the same time, I do respect them for the work that they do for the citizens of the city, and I intend to keep on trying to do that. Couple comments have been made about my attendance at the Insurance Advisory Committee. I do think it's more than 3, probably about 6. I haven't been to each and every one of those. I have staff that goes to those. But I will say, and I obviously don't know this for absolute, but I have talked to people that have been part of that process. Those 6 times that I've been at the Insurance Advisory Committee is 6 more times than any other city manager over the last 20 years. So I have been involved in the process. I've met with the unions. I've tried to talk about health insurance, and we're trying to get something done on this. With regards to the 63% of teachers that have moved off of Master Medical, I do give credit to the teachers for doing that, and I give credit to the union in their efforts to work with us on that. But let's go back and revisit history and really look at it more carefully. At the time that we did that, 100% of the teachers were on Master Medical, 100% of the school employees, because it was in the contract, and it was the interpretation of the union, it was the interpretation of the city, that it was the only thing that could be offered because it hadn't been negotiated otherwise. We adopted a section of the state law, Section 16 of Chapter 32B, which made HMOs available. They've already been offered to the city employees. They'd never been offered to the schools. But when you adopt Section 16, you have to offer it to the schools. The HMOs were coming. They were coming to the school department. They were coming to all of the employees of the city. I'll admit, it was somewhat of a strong-arm tactic, but it made the HMOs available to the school department. We were requested continually by new teachers, I want to join an HMO. And we wanted to benefit those people. We also wanted to save money for the city so that we could maintain the services. It was under that, under the provision of those HMOs, that suddenly, the proposal was made by the school union, the teachers' union, to offer the HMOs and the PPOs with a restriction on what the differential could be. So I value the back and forth that took place at that bargaining table, but it was a back and forth. It wasn't just a single move by the school union to offer the PPO. It was a back and forth that in large part came off of the HMO. I do want to work together. That was the purpose of the coalition bargaining that we put in. But it does, there's nothing in this Chapter 150E that provides for retirees. And we do want to provide for retirees. But by state law, we're not going to cut. A couple people have gotten up and said, you're going to eliminate our health insurance. You're going to cut our health insurance. We're not. All I'm saying is, Master Medical, and with all due respect to all of the people who spoke, that spoke of how Master Medical has been so important to them, Master Medical isn't really a Cadillac. We're the only community left in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that still offers Master Medical. There are other communities that have small pockets, but all of the other communities have gotten rid of it. Less than, probably about 1% of Blue Cross's book of business is still Master Medical. There haven't been problems. The school teachers in Chelmsford, Bruce, the school teachers in Chelmsford went to the PPO. There hasn't been any great fallout from that. All of the employees in Chelmsford did. The employees in Westford did, Drake it did, Tewksbury did, all around the Commonwealth. And there hasn't been a problem. The PPO is just as good as the Master Medical, if not better. And if you look, and I know that all of you are probably a little, you don't want to sit through one of my PowerPoint presentations. The poor city council has to do that enough. But if we went through and looked at each one of the benefits, the PPO is just as good, if not better, in terms of coverage. It allows you to go out of network. It allows you to go to whatever doctor you want to. It allows you to get your drugs. The and again, I'll be happy to sit down and do a more formal presentation because I don't think, given the discussion tonight, that it's necessarily the time to do this, although I'm prepared to if you'd like. But just some facts. There's been a 200% increase in costs in the last 10 years. 13% of the city's operating budget goes to health insurance. That means, that used to be, Councilor Caulfield mentioned this, it used to be considerably lower than that. That means that there is, roughly 6 or 7% less to put into schools, to put towards kids, to put towards police on the street. Right now we're paying $39 million. And if you were here earlier, you heard that we have an unfunded liability in the city of Lowell of $433 million. That has to be borne by somebody. It's going to likely be borne by your children and your grandchildren. We've made cuts across the board of all of our employees and all of our services. And all we're saying right now is let's do something about health insurance. Let's bring this cost under control. Let's offer the employees and the retirees a plan that's just as good as the Master Medical. And let's do it. It's going to save you money. It's going to save the city money. Let me just quickly, again, I don't want to go through a whole. Well, hold on. Retirees are eligible for PPO. Yes, they are. Yes. And by the way, this does not affect the Medicare people at all. The Medicare people are all taken care of, and people that are not eligible for Medicare, the people that are on Medicare, if we eliminate Master Medical, they will take on MedX with OBRA benefits that will actually enhance the benefits. And I'm prepared to come in and talk to you in more detail about how that would work. As far as the PPO for the people that aren't eligible for Medicare, you can get on the PPO. I met with Blue Cross just yesterday and discussed this with them, and the PPO is available. Look, let me tell you a story. When I was over in Chelmsford, and Bruce, you know this story. When I was in, one of the gripes that we had from the retirees at the time, Bruce, maybe you remember this, was the retirees that had the good fortune to have moved to Florida or the Carolinas, moved out of state. They'd used Harvard, they'd used Tufts, they'd used the HMO Blue. And suddenly they got into these places, and they suddenly found out the only plan that they could take with them was Master Medical. That was the only thing that was portable. They got down there and they suddenly found out, they went to get a routine physical. Well, under the HMO, it was a $5 copay or a $10 copay. Now, under Master Medical down in Florida, or Carolinas, or for that matter, Connecticut, it was $500, $600 to get that. The colonoscopy was now going to cost them $750 that they used to get for the copay, the $5, $10. We made the change to bring the costs under control, but also to provide a portable plan that would save the retirees money when they went out to those other locations. So that was the benefit of it. And Bruce, I don't know if you're going to back me up on that, but that was the discussion that we had at the time, that those people were not being treated fairly, and we wanted to put a proposal out on the table that would benefit those people. I'm not looking at cutting back on the contribution, but something has to give. We can't sustain these costs, and still, pretty soon, health insurance will be up around 20% of the city budget, 25% of the city budget. And then what are we going to do? Then how do we make it work? Retirees right now represent about 35% of our health insurance premiums. Soon it's going to be over 50%. It's just going to grow, and it's going to grow, and that $433 million is going to be out there, and it's going to continue to grow. And that's the liability we face. We have to bring this under control. This isn't easy. I'm going to stop there, I think. But I'm anxious to the city council. I indicated I would meet and work with the retirees on educating them to the plans, and I continue to stand by that. I didn't do it until now because the open enrollment isn't until next spring. We will do that by that time. I will do it sooner. I will be happy to meet with every retiree in this room, and you can bring others, and we'll go to the auditorium, and we'll go through this whole thing, and we'll bring the Blue Cross reps in. We'll bring in communities around us that have similar plans. I'd be happy to talk about it and have a dialogue. But, we have to do something about this, and this wasn't an effort in any way to eliminate people's insurance or to take anything away from people who worked hard all their careers, are entitled to insurance. By law, we have to provide it, and by a moral and ethical imperative, we made a commitment. We're going to continue to do that. We're going to provide you insurance. In my mind, insurance is, we want to do this. This insurance is just as good as what you have now, if not better.
Council Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think one of the things that's clear here is there's a disconnect, and I think that what the manager just suggested would be a good first start is communication. It's clear that not everyone's on the same page as to what the insurance is, and it's also clear that some folks, this is a very personal thing. This is a very difficult issue for the council. We're looking at a $433 million tab that's going to have to be paid by our kids, our grandkids. This tab is going to continue to grow. So we have to do something to deal with it, but I think it's the fair thing to do is at least meet and educate and get this information out there so that folks understand maybe a little bit better, and there may be less resistance and there may be less fear. What I saw tonight was fear and panic from folks that are afraid they're going to lose what's most important, probably second most important to them outside of their family. So, I think that we have to, the motion is to get a report on the implementation. I think that what we need to have is some meetings with the manager and these retirees and the unions and get this information. Whenever changes are made in the city, the biggest issue or the biggest, I guess our biggest obstacle is educating people, whether it's the trash removal. Anytime we've made a change, it's been educating folks to understand what the change is or could be and to find out what is going to work best. And without going any further, because the motion is to get a report, I have no problem with getting a report back from the manager and supporting that. But I think that the first step is going to have to be some education here, some meetings, and for folks retired folks in particular, to feel like they're getting the respect of a meeting and finding out what is going on. Mr. Manager, I understand from your point of view, this isn't even open for another, say, 6 months, whatever the time frame is, but it's clear that this is an important issue for folks, and their health and their safety can't wait until we think it's a timely issue. I think right now, if it's on the table, then we ought to start getting the information out there. And, hopefully there can be a better fit than what we see tonight. But I think it's obvious that we have to have those meetings, and however they can be set up through your office, get the auditorium, that'd be wonderful. I think we could all probably go and get some an education on this. But I think, moving forward with this, we have to let people know what the options are, and bring in some of the folks from Blue Cross Blue Shield, because I don't think anybody most people in this room necessarily understand what the true options are. And I think that's the first step, and to get some feedback as to and welcome everybody to come on back and get feedback. But I think we have to get an understanding out there of what the options are, and that we're not looking to pull insurance and not provide insurance for people. It's a matter of quite frankly, what we can afford and what they can afford, and coming up with the best fit.
Thank you. Council Mercer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe discussion is important. I think there can be a discussion without a home rule petition. I don't know if my colleagues will support it, but when I went to school, I learned there were 3 branches of government, so that someone wouldn't have absolute power, and that's what scares me the most. And I feel that our retirees should sit at the table, and I'd be willing to make a substitute motion on the original that we withdraw our home rule petition. We'll see who seconds that.
I'm afraid that motion is out of order.
And why is that?
Because it was not publicized. Under the new open meeting law that went into effect in April, if it's not pertinent to the issue.
It said that I could not suspend the rules and make a motion. I'm not suspending the rules to make a motion. I'm amending the motion in front of me.
I will defer to the city solicitor, but my impression is that it's not in order.
That's correct. And again, while there is a group of people who are pretty unified with respect to pulling away from a home rule petition as an example, there may be an equal amount of people who support such a petition. And for those reasons, all of those motions have to properly be on the agenda so that everybody, not just one group or another, can
That's
come
fair.
and voice
That's
their
fair.
opinion. And
That's
so
fair.
You can
I'll
file
make
it-
the
you can file
motion
it on
next week.
Friday. You can
I'll
file
make
it
the
on
motion
Friday.
next week.
Councilor Martin. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to start by thanking the folks that came down here this night. I think we heard some, pretty powerful, in some cases pretty personal testimony that I know was difficult for people to give, and I think it's important for us to hear. But, I think as to the council's respect for retirees, I can recall the very first meeting after I was elected a city councilor, and there was a vote on that night to support expansion of benefits for retirees. And it was, not that it was controversial, but there were very few people who were able to vote because other members of the council were potential beneficiaries of the system. And so we left only with 5. We needed all 5 to vote. And I was impressed then. What I said then was I was impressed by the phone calls that I got, the quality of the discussion. And I have to say that I am more so, and I said at that time, if this is what it's going to be like being a city councilor, I'm going to look forward to it very much. That was over 10 years ago, and that has proven to be the case. We did hear people share some pretty personal things tonight, and I'm appreciative of that. Most of the people that I've heard from are passionate on this issue, and what they've said to me and to us is that that we need to give this serious consideration. We really do. And believe me, I would not have voted as I did for that home rule petition if I thought it was going to be a life or death issue for people. There are quality health insurance plans that the city is going to continue to offer to its employees and to its retirees, whether that home rule petition passes or not. But I think this meeting has, the motion on is to take a look at this. And I think there are people here who have pretty clear understanding of what the ramifications of a change in plans would mean for them. But I also, from some of the comments, it appears that others are not. And I know there is always if something works for you now, why change it? And, but the reason a change is in order is when I went to that first meeting over 10 years ago, the health insurance costs to the city were, at least the figures I have, that I had that night in the summer that I have now, were about $13 million. Now, it's $39 million. So that's 3 times in 10 years. I view that as a 300% increase, not a 200% increase, Mr. Manager. This is from a memo that we got from you. So clearly, this is something that can't be sustained much longer. That's the reason that not only Lowell has filed this home rule petition, but other communities have too. We've had a member of our delegation encourage the council to support the efforts of certain people at the State House to do something about plan design and getting costs under control for municipalities. It's just something that can't continue the way it is. So if we have to have this vote next week, we'll have the vote next week. But I think in the meantime, or alongside that, we need to the council should get a report that's requested tonight as to what would happen if this change were adopted. And that information needs to be shared with these folks here tonight and other retirees and other employees for that matter, because change has to happen. It has to. The city cannot afford it. The country can't afford it. This will go bankrupt over health insurance costs. We'll have closed police stations, closed schools, and we need to get these costs under control. The vote we took in the summer was one method to do that. I know that folks in organized labor vehemently oppose that method, and I'm open to other methods. But we need to do something to get these costs under control, and we need to do it in a way that's not going to jeopardize the health or security of the people that work for the city. I think we should be able to do that. That's what I think some of these plans that we have now, that are available now for people, do. And I think we need to get that word out about the existing plans as soon as possible.
Thank you, Councilor Martin. Councilor Caulfield and Councilor Dakota.
I think Councilor Dakota, you want to speak? Oh, okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I leave my home on Tuesday evening, it doesn't matter if the meeting goes to 11:30, or it doesn't matter to me. It really doesn't. Because I'm here and I listen to the debate. For close to 2 hours now, we have talked on this issue, debated the issue, and listened to 11 or 12 people come to the podium. And I don't want to sound facetious, Mr. Mayor, but the vote was taken on July 13th for the home rule petition, and I did support it. I did also ask, Mr. Manager, please meet with those retirees. On November 16th, 5 months later, Mr. Manager, you're now going to meet with the retirees. You probably should have met with them in August or September and explained to them the benefits and healthcare issues that are out there. But once again, I don't care if we spend 3 hours on this debate. It doesn't matter to me. But Councilor Dakota and I and others, Mr. Manager, would you please meet with the retirees? Will they have a place at the table? They're people. They're human beings. They're citizens of the region and the city. And that's what I'm asking. When do you plan on meeting with the retirees?
Well, again, as I said earlier, Councilor, the question was put to me back in July about meeting with retirees. It was to explain the health care options. If I met with them in August and I convinced them all to shift, the open enrollment was over. So the intent was to move forward, to meet with the unions, to try to hammer out some type of deal so that the home rule petition really wouldn't be needed, or if it went through, that we would just sort of stick it to the side while we operated under an agreement. And in the meantime, we would talk about meeting with the retirees to explain the different options to them after that was done. But again, I'm more than happy to do that now. I will we'll work to set up a time within the next 4 weeks, or might want to wait till after this holidays, maybe meet in January, something like that.
I would like to see it sooner.
Well, that's
let me
fine.
tell you,
I mean, I
Mr.
don't-
And let me
I
tell
don't
you
have a
something, Mr.
problem,
Manager.
Counselor.
When you were speaking on the different health care plans,
Right.
they were listening intently. You could hear a pin drop. They want to listen to you. They want to hear your advice and your wisdom on this issue. You just can't promise them, yeah, I'll meet with you. Meet with them in January?
Counselor, again, I'll meet with them.
If I was you, I'd meet with them as soon as possible.
Well, thank you, Counselor. I appreciate your advice on that, and I will meet with them as soon as possible. You have to set up the time. You have to get the notices out, because I don't want to have it go out and say people say we don't know it, we didn't know about it. We have the holidays coming up. Again, I'd be more than happy to meet with them in the middle of December. That's fine, but it's a busy time of year for people, and I don't want to have people say, well, I didn't know about it. But again, I'd be more than happy to. I'd be happy to have multiple meetings.
It was a perfect time in August. Last August, you could have picked up the phone and make arrangements to have a meeting.
Councilor Dakota.
Thank you. I'd like to personally thank everyone who came tonight. We appreciate you being here. This is why I ran for City Council. Democracy is critically important to our future. And to those of you who spoke and told your personal stories today, thank you very much. I want to share a personal story with you, if you don't mind. During the City Council election campaign term, my father was diagnosed with lung cancer and had surgery. I missed part of the campaign because of that. And then he was very concerned because he did not have nursing home care in his insurance. He was very concerned what was going to happen to him. And then in January of this year, in fact, right after the inauguration, I went to Las Vegas, where he was in the emergency room in a coma. And we didn't know what was going to happen with him. And around his bed, when he was not able to communicate with us, we had to discuss what we would do with him, because he didn't have health care to care for him long term in a nursing home, and it's devastating. It was emotionally draining, and we were heartbroken. He ended up dying, and so we didn't have to consider that any longer. But I can tell you that no one around this side of the room wants to take from you something that is critical to your life and to your health. But we also have serious responsibilities to manage our budget and to manage your future and our future and the future of our family, our children, and our country. And we are trying to balance those two things. And we want to work together. Mr. Georges, you were very eloquent. I love listening to you speak. But it has to be more than that. We can't just speak about working together and openness and honesty and finding consensus. We really need to do it. I'm happy to vote against the home rule petition if the commitment can be that we will continue honestly and openly, understanding that we all have critical issues that we need to work on, and it's all of our future. So, thank you for coming.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott, did you have your hand up?
Well, I feel we should all say something on this, because we all voted for it, with the exception of Councilor Murphy. Maybe some mistakes were made. Maybe we didn't communicate in the right fashion. But 8 of us that sat here in July and voted for it had not only the best interest of the folks that are in the audience now that are taxpayers in mind, but everybody else in the city. Should retirees have a seat at the table? Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. And I don't want to beat a dead horse, but week after week, even including tonight, we're faced with huge increases, particularly healthcare. We're focusing on healthcare because we focused on every other aspect of the budget up to this point. We've cut positions. We're bare bones. Can we do more? We're going to have to do more. How are we going to do it? I don't know. I think what I hear tonight is that the retirees, and rightfully so, they should have a seat. They should have a say. And I don't think anyone here is opposed to it. How we get there, I don't know. The legislation is filed. It hasn't passed. Does it have a chance? I don't know. But we can do 2 things. We can sit back and do nothing, and then our services and our schools and our police and the city gets in more, it goes down the, I don't want to say down the drain, but we're going backwards, we go nowhere, and we end up like some other communities that don't do anything, and they're not moving forward like I believe the city is. Maybe this can be amended at the state level if it has a shot. Look, the city of Boston is going to file their own home rule petition because they recognize that healthcare costs are going to cripple the community. So whatever it takes for us to get there and to get retirees a seat at the table, I think it's only fair, and then we move forward to address the healthcare issues and the healthcare costs. So I'll support the motion, and maybe that can be part of your report, Mr. Manager, in addition to meeting and getting a better handle as to what we're voting and where we're going. But we have to do something, and that something is support some change to get these costs under control. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Mendonça?
I'm going to comment. I'm assuming we're like we have been in the past under the rule of necessity, so that I can comment on this. Okay. I mean, the vote that we had in, the vote that we had in July was not targeted, obviously, to the retirees. I have the utmost respect. I may not know you personally, but I have met many of you, and from my visits to the schools, I know a large number of you here worked in the schools and retired from that. And certainly that was not the intent, was to target retirees. We are looking at the overall picture, and I also would like to acknowledge and thank those that came to the microphone and stated that we have a difficult choice before us. These decisions are not easy. We're facing rising costs, and we have to manage them. We have to balance the increases that we impose on our taxpayers and ratepayers with the benefits we provide. I do believe that we need to move forward. I would like to see the retirees, being a significant number of those involved, do have a seat at the discussions. And I would like to have the retirees have the options that our other employees have. And that I hope that you would learn what your options are, what the impacts are of each, because obviously for more than 60% of our current employees to choose something other than Master Medical, they saw something in it that benefited them, but I would, like them or the retirees, would not want to force anyone into a specific plan, but would like you to consider the other plans and learn what you can and see if maybe there are benefits that for each individual might be better than the current plan. Maybe it's not, but that obviously needs to be a very personal choice. But we have to be cognizant that we need to control costs in some way. I've been on PPO plan, and I didn't have a choice. When I was in private sector, and they offered it. Now, unlike an HMO where you need referrals, a PPO you don't need a referral. But there are in-network and out-of-network services. The big difference is the in-network services are under contract. So they're limited in what they're going to charge. But that same doctor who has someone who's not in the PPO charges a much higher rate, and that's the difference in the cost to us. And so if the services are available through a PPO, everyone saves because they're being contained by contract. The mass medical is not. They can be open-ended for what the hospitals and the doctors provide because it's not, some of them they're under contract in the background by the insurance companies, but not necessarily so. In any case, we have to find a balance somewhere along the way because I have a new grandson and I do not want to leave him with the bill or any other grandchildren that might come along the way or anybody else's grandchildren. I think it's important that we manage these costs so that we can pay for them as we go along and not let it grow out of control so that we find ourselves owing millions and millions of dollars that we don't have. And we someday may have to bond. I mean, that's something that's going on in Methuen. They've gotten to the point that they don't want a huge tax increase on their residents, so now they're going to go out and get a loan. But now, instead of paying it as you go, it's going to be paid over years. But the costs that brought about that bill are not going down. So what are we going to do? Get another bond, another loan? And that's something we can't do. So somehow we need to bring this under control. And I don't want to see it done on the backs of the retirees. I do respect you. I know you've given your all to the community and that you expected some level of protection in your retirement years. And so I would caution the manager that we carefully move forward and try to contain the costs as best we can, but give the retirees the option of what may be best for them. And then certainly we want to encourage you wherever possible to take the lower cost plans if you get the services you need, because it will save you money, it will save the city money. And that's how we need to move forward.
Thank you. Council Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to follow up, excuse me, as I was listening to everybody and talking about the education piece of this, I think there's a disconnect here, obviously. And I think it's a very complex issue. I don't fully understand it. I don't have to make the decision, though, for myself and my family. But I think that, you know, when we were doing it kind of made me think of it when we were talking about the trash recycling. What do? We asked Mr. Manager for you through DPW to come back with a plan, how we're going to educate people. We're going to go out into the schools. We're going to, you know, what are we going to do to educate the folks on how to progress with this plan for changing the recycling and how we were going to do our trash and automate it. And people were afraid it wasn't going to work, but through the education and persistence, it has worked. And it's been a benefit to the residents, I think, and the city in terms of financially. And I think this can be a similar situation. Mr. Manager, I'd ask that in any report that you come back to us, maybe, you know, for next week, whenever you can, if you can come back with some type of plan and how we can get out to these folks here and our other employees, whoever this applies to, especially the retirees who are not in City Hall, they're not, you know, in the mainstream, to educate folks to what their options are and what this means to them financially, but more importantly to their coverage, so that people understand we're not going to take their coverage away, and hopefully there is a plan that will be just as good but more cost effective. And that's really the purpose. You know, we're all in a tough position here, and you simply can't just continue to add on to our debt and pass it on to next generations. Thank you.
Council Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I appreciate all those who spoke tonight and in the comments from my colleagues and in the city manager as well. The point of the motion was to deal with this uncertainty that's posed by the health insurance plan design, so that people would have a greater understanding of how it would work in practice, and to from there move into some sort of set of guidelines on how it would be implemented in the future, so that there isn't there aren't things that we haven't thought about fully back in July that arise, so that there is that certainty on how it would work in practice, and that the authority that is given by this council is really not just a unilateral changing of healthcare. That people fully understand what the impact would be on not only their healthcare plans, but also to the city as well. And so I would, along with my colleagues, appreciate a report as soon as possible. And from there, then we can begin to discuss guidelines or even another way to achieve what I think most people in this room want to achieve, which is to provide for the health insurance of our workers and our former workers, but also to do it in a sustainable way. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we vote, would my colleagues mind if I just spoke briefly from the chair? Again, I just want to also thank you all for coming out and speaking on this motion. I think it's a good motion. I think obviously from the standpoint of information gathering, it gets us started. It's too bad that many of you feel that you've not received information, obviously, up to this point. I think the manager's getting the message loud and clear that he will be reaching out to you. We cannot, just so you know, under our charter, instruct the city manager to have the retirees at the table. But, in my opinion, I think he certainly has gotten the message this evening that the majority of this council feels that as we go forward in developing whatever we end up developing, because again, the home rule petition has just been filed. It's not gone anywhere from what I understand. I think this meeting has been very productive in getting information to people and setting up the next step. So again, I want to thank you all for being here. For those of you that know me, I come from a family of educators, some who are retired, and I just think that it was never my intent back in July to take anything away from the retirees. But at the same time, being on both the school side and the city side as mayor, try to deal with the budget issues that we do have in front of us as a city. But again, I think this was a productive session. I want to thank you all for being here, and I can promise you from this chair that you'll continue to get information going forward. So with that being said, on the motion, unless Councilor Mercia has...
I just have one last comment, and I won't say another word on this particular issue, but we can design another way, and we can deal differently and include someone instead of excluding someone. I believe we can do that, but I believe we don't need a home rule petition in place to do that. And I'm going to file the motion next week so that we're either, putting our vote where our mouth is, or we're not. And I'm going to put it on the agenda next week. We're going to vote on it.
Anybody else on the motion that's before us? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed? It's a vote. Thank you. Again, thank you all for being here. We're going to move right into our public hearings. We'll give a 5-minute recess if we could.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, we're ready. I'd like to call the meeting back to order, please. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilor Dakota.
Here.
Councilor Elliott. Councilor Martin. Councilor Mendonça.
Here.
Councilor Mercia. Mayor Milanazzo.
Here.
Councilor Murphy.
Here.
Councilor Broderick.
Here.
Councilor Caulfield.
Here.
9 present.
Thank you. Again, good evening. It being public hearing time, we have 4 public hearings before us this evening. Let me just read the first one. In City Council ordinance. An ordinance amending the Code of Ordinance of the City of Lowell with respect to Chapter 290 thereof entitled Lowell Zoning Ordinance by amending various vehicle-related sections. Do we want a presentation from the administration, or should we open the public hearing? What's the wish of the council? Open the public hearing. Public hearing is now open. For those wishing to speak in favor, name and address, Deb, please. Thank you.
Deb Forgione, PCC. Can I just talk to Adam for 1 second? Okay. I'm here in favor of the various vehicle-related section zoning amendment. It was well thought out. There was a lot of collaboration, and I mainly wanted to come to thank everybody, because going to the planning board and having them hear us out, make a suggestion to come to the City Council Zoning Subcommittee, that collaboration, including the neighborhoods, it satisfied everybody, and it was creative. And I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for everybody for listening. The planning board even came to the zoning subcommittee and gave their thoughts, and they listened. And from that, Councilor Dakota has a meeting with us next week to talk about how neighborhoods can be more involved and be more, to tell us ahead of time so that there isn't times when people don't understand, what's before them. So I really came to say thank you. I appreciate it. I support it, and thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Anyone else want to speak in favor?
Mayor Milanazzo, members of the Lowell City Council, Mr. Manager, ladies and gentlemen. For the record, my name is Mark Goldman, 58 Oakland Street, Lowell, Mass. Wish to be recorded in favor of this. I attended the planning board meeting a few weeks ago. I was at the zoning subcommittee meeting, neighborhood subcommittee meeting, where they ironed out the differences, and it's a great compromise. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? In favor?
My name is Lucille Richards, 114 Billing Street. I'm here this evening representing the Centerville Neighborhood Group. Our neighborhood supports the proposed zoning amendment. It will allow for a vital project at 550 Bridge Street to occur. This project is in line with the neighborhood's vision for developing and sustaining a quality business district on Bridge Street. The parcel at 550 Bridge Street has been vacant and an incredible eyesore for over 15 years. Centerville residents look forward to seeing this project at 550 Bridge Street move forward. We believe the current proposal by Mr. Adey and his associates and your support of the zoning amendment represents the best and quickest way to develop this signature property. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? In favor, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition? The public hearing is closed. I would need a motion to
Move
approval.
move approval as amended.
So
By
moved.
Council Caulfield, second by Council Broderick. Any other discussion? Roll
Mr. Mayor,
call.
just
Yes.
very
Council
briefly,
Caulfield.
I want to thank Adam Backey and the neighborhood organizations who brought this forward and exercised their power in the city. And I wish more people would do that. And because of that, an amendment was brought forward, and everyone is happy about that now. So it's best for the entire city, not just one neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Roll call.
Councilor Dakota.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça. Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Milanazzo.
Yes.
Councilor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. Moving on to the next public hearing. In City Council, an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, with respect to Chapter 272 thereof entitled Water and Sewers by adding a new Article 9 entitled Water Use Restriction. Chair opens the public hearing for anyone wishing to speak in favor. In favor. In favor. That portion of the public hearing is closed. Those wishing to speak in opposition. In opposition. Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the council?
Mr. Mayor, just a question
Council
through you to the manager. Everyone knows water resources is the Merrimack River. And when I read this, restrictions on water use, is this just in an emergency, Mr. Manager?
Yes.
Yeah, just,
Right.
thank you.
Council Martin?
Thanks. I have a similar question in what constitutes an emergency, because there's a state of water supply emergency that's declared by the state, and I guess then a state of water supply conservation that's declared by the city. So I'm all for the city, having the ability to impose water conservation measures when we deem it appropriate. But it seems to me the state could declare an emergency. There could be other parts of the state that are affected, aquifers and the like, that just don't impact us. And what would happen then? What happens? I guess I didn't follow it enough to know when the state declares a state of water supply emergency, what does that mean for this ordinance?
I guess I'd ask Mr. Lahiff to respond to that. Dan, could you, in terms of a state?
The difference would be if that, I assume, is that if the state declared an emergency, then they could implement the amount of water that's drawn, and that would enable us to enact the ordinance. Frankly, if we had to enact an ordinance with our water supply, everybody in the region is in very serious trouble.
Right, and that, I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned about the reverse, when maybe everybody else is in trouble, but we're not. Are we going to be stuck with, restrictions that people aren't going to like, and frankly, we're not going to need?
I think that would.
If I may, I'm not sure. I'm not aware of any time the state has declared such a state of emergency, but it's put in there so that it could be. I think the state would have the ability to do it, whether this ordinance is in place or not. But if they were to put an order upon us that would declare a state of emergency along the entire Merrimack River, area, because the water is so low that it would, if we were to draw it all out, there'd be nothing left for those downstream.
All right. I think I have section 106 here. It says if there is a state emergency, then you can't violate whatever the conditions of that are. I suppose then if you do, you're also in violation of this ordinance. Is that the point, Madam Solicitor? Okay. All right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none. Motion to approve by, do we already have a motion by Councilor Mercy, seconded by Councilor Broderick? Roll call.
Councilor Dakota?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Councilor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milanazzo?
Yes.
Councilor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor
Yes.
Caulfield? 9 yeas.
Public hearing in City Council ordinance, an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, with respect to Chapter 272, Article 6, entitled Established Rates and Charges. Public hearing is now open for those wishing to speak in favor. In favor.
Mayor Milanazzo, members of the Lowell City Council, Mr. Manager, ladies and gentlemen. For the record, my name is Mark Goldman, 58 Oakland Street, Lowell, Mass. And I wish to be recorded in favor of this. The manager made a brief presentation earlier this evening. And one of the reasons for the rate increase that's needed is $19 million system improvements. And I think that alone is reason enough to pass this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? In favor. Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition, public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the council? Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. At the Finance Subcommittee meeting, I just briefly touched on this issue. I believe there's 25,000 residential homes in the city, and there's also a $900,000 deficit in the enterprise fund. Just the $25,000 homes, the residents, if they were charged $36 on average a year increase, to be $900,000 raised. And that's not even including the Lowell School Department, which paid $140,000 last year for water, the University of Lowell, the Lowell Housing Authority, all the nonprofits, but most importantly, businesses who use an enormous amount of water, restaurants, car washes, etc. So the 24% increase, Mr. Manager, I just feel as though you're raising more money than is needed, and I cannot support this. And I'm not going to labor the issue no more. You know where I'm coming from. And the residents, the 25,000 residents, are going to foot the bill along with other people, the businesses. So I'm not supporting it.
Councilor,
Mr. Manager?
if I may, I mentioned earlier, and perhaps there was some confusion, on an annualized basis, it's $49, but for this year, because there's only 6 months, it's only $24. So it's $24. So your comment about 25,000 times, coming out to $36. For half a year, it's only 24. So actually, that's how we come to that number.
If you look at all the residents, Mr. Manager, and all due respect, I know, you have a tough job, but so don't I. Just the residents alone would raise that money, not even including all the other businesses.
But I'm
you
saying
Lowell, the Lowell Housing Authority, the Lowell School Department, etc.
But if you take the 25,000 times $24,
Right.
That doesn't come to $900,000.
As far as I'm concerned, Mr. Manager, you're raising more money than is needed. That's the end of my...
Councilman Donser, then Councilor Broderick.
I don't think if we had a choice, we would want to raise the rates. What I see before me is either I raise the water rates, or if we don't have that revenue, the state's going to set a tax rate which all property owners are going to have to make up that deficit anyway. The difference being that if we do it through the water rates, there are some high-volume water users that will bear that burden, and some of them are not subject to property taxes. Which means that if I leave it to be the property tax rate, that we will share in more of that burden as homeowners than the water users. Either way, we're going to have to raise the $900,000 this year, and which would become $1.8 million roughly the following year. But the following year, our debt service goes up by at least $1 million, or near $1 million at least. So we're going to need that rate anyway going forward. We saw the projections at the Finance Subcommittee meeting where we saw that we've leveled off on the deficits. There's still going to be some deficits, not like they were in May, but that is due in part to this rate increase. So if this rate increase doesn't go into effect, we'll have the $900,000 deficit this year, and it'll just grow year after year. So as reluctant as I am to raise rates, I don't see an alternative. I think this is going to be the fairest way because people who use the water are going to pay for the use of that water, and that's the whole point of an enterprise fund. We don't want to run a deficit in the enterprise fund.
Thank you. Councilor Broderick, then Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess my points were just hit on by Council Mendonça for the most part. And maybe it would be beneficial if, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the manager, if you pull up the PowerPoint slide that talked about the water forecast. I don't know if Council Caulfield was here when we did this. We did this at the beginning of the last subcommittee meeting, and it showed the forecast of the deficit if we don't do anything. And maybe you can explain what will happen if we raise the $900 million this year and 1.8 next. This is not going to be necessarily a surplus for us to pad the account. And the reality is that this is the best way to raise the money so that it falls on the users, including the nonprofits, which have a huge presence in Lowell, including the hotel and some of the other properties that we've discussed and had concern about transfers on. So through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Manager, maybe you could explain that again so that folks at home that didn't see the subcommittee meeting and other folks that weren't here. Thank you.
Right. Councilor, to your point, as you can see there, and this is as we are now with the rates as currently structured, you can see the gap between the revenues and the expenditures, the red line being the expenditures and the blue line being the revenue. The yellow represents the fund balance. In 2011, we're operating on a shortfall already, and so we're trying to close that up in fiscal year 2011 with 6 months to go. If we don't do something, you can see that, as Councilman Mendonça indicated, that gets put onto the tax bills. And then still not doing anything in 2012, it gets even larger, and then so on all the way through to 2015. If you look at the what we're proposing with the 24%, with the $900,000 for the remaining portion of this year, you can see that that would close up the gap between the blue and the red lines, the expenses and the revenues, and it would provide us with a really just a balance in 2011, or a zero condition in 2011. In 2012, actually revenues pick up a little bit over expenses for that 1 year. It builds up that fund balance, but that's immediately lost in 2013, which is when another rate increase will have to be considered to fund the debt service costs that we've taken on. So in order to close out 2011 and make that $900,000 gap go away, you need to do the 24% increase. And then that will take us all the way through 2013.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One last thing. If we could get, I asked this at the subcommittee meeting, but something like similar to this for the wastewater, which there was an indication that we don't necessarily have to raise them now. We will be okay. But if we could see what the projections are for the increases when it hits, because I would prefer, and I think other councilors had the similar sentiment, is to not hit people with a 24% increase, but do 2 or 3 over time to balance out as we have the debt service hitting our liabilities.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Council Mercy, then Council Dakota.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I suppose the increase in I supported the increase in the meals tax because those using the service of going out to eat had an option to eat at home. And I heard a comment, those that use the water will have to pay. I don't know anybody in the city that doesn't use the water or doesn't take a bath. I don't know who any of those people are. But the users in this case are the ones who drink the water, take the showers, businesses that rely on the water, laundromats, restaurants, etc. The water will still taste the same. Nothing will change. These users have no other option. I don't know where else they go for the water unless they buy it at the Moolis and put it in the tub or whatever they want to do. But I'm drawing the line here this evening. I'm tired of the state and the city raising fees and taxing our way out of our fiscal problems. Unemployment has reached 10% and still growing. And in the past 3 years, we have over 1,500 foreclosures of property in the city of Lowell. We recently learned that we should expect higher gas bills because state regulators have approved an increase in the natural gas distribution to the tune of paying as much as $15 more a month. I cannot, through this vote, add to the burden of placing an additional raise in fees on the ratepayer. I ask that we be more frugal. I question where are the operational cost reductions from the energy performance contracts and other efforts to help the taxpayer. That's what I want to know, and I thought we were going to save money there. We must work hard to sustain a balance between revenues and expenditures so that deficit spending does not happen. I'm really truthfully telling you this, Mr. Manager. We must be careful and realize that we can't borrow ourselves into prosperity. Eventually, we have to pay the bill. So I just want to say that I'm not supporting this, because I think if you know the beginning of the meeting, we had this supplemental appropriation, we seem to have found the money to the tune of 1.6 million, but we can't find 900,000, but we found it for all the other things, and I think maybe if we look a little further, we can find it, because I don't think I want to keep raising fees and taxes and everything else that's going with it. One of the goals should have been, Mr. Manager, that we can have 1 year where we're not going to raise taxes. I thought maybe that would have been a good goal to have. And I'm sorry, because I know that I try to agree with you, but I can't agree with this. I'm sorry.
Councilor Dakota?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I have two questions, and one might actually be to Mr. Moses. I'm curious, I understand about compounding deficits, but what is the argument for not doing a multi-year raise versus the 1 year right up front?
Actually, there is a lot of attractiveness to a multi-year raise, spreading this over time. Unfortunately, we need $900,000 in fiscal 2011, and we only have 6 months to raise that.
But doesn't that give us a surplus in 2012, though?
Yes, it does, and you see it right on that chart where, we're right up front about this. There'll be approximately a $900,000 surplus in 2012, which will completely be eaten up in 2013. Now, you could lower rates in 2012, but you can't cut the rate increase in 2011 because 2011 won't balance. That's the problem.
Okay. Well, let me ask you the other question then, if I can. You mentioned earlier in the presentation, the Finance Subcommittee, that we'd either have to increase the rate or you'd have departmental cuts. What types of cuts would that be?
It's much more difficult on the water side because you can't cut chemicals, you can't cut the power that pumps the water, you can't cut the staffing that is required to operate the plant. It's much more difficult to cut expenses in a utility.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Murphy, then Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councilor Mendonça made some good points about it, and really the thing that you can't cut is prior expenditures. It has to be paid one way or the other, and the preference would certainly be to not have that fall solely on the property tax, but be spread around to those users, and to align the fee really with the amount of usage, so that it makes sense, so that we're further conserving our water resources. My question through you, Mr. Mayor, to the manager or to Mr. Layev is about the revised fund projections, and does this take into account some of the things that were laid out in the water conservation plan? That if we go through with a number of the steps laid out there, would we then be able to, in future years, see a slowing of the increases in costs?
Someone from the water, Dan or Jim, if you would like to, Jim Revide from Woodward and Curran, would like to respond to that.
As far as the implementation of the Water Conservation Act, there are some ideas that we do plan on implementing as far as grant money that is available for low-flow toilets and faucets and rebates that are available. Also, our large meter replacement will make more efficiency as far as what's going on with what's going to be total billed and total revenues that they will receive. So within the next few years, I strongly suspect that we'll see an increase in water conservation and in far more accurate accounting of what we're actually billing and selling and producing.
I think a number of the steps laid out in that plan would in fact lead to decreases in costs. I guess the question was that factored into the current projections?
And I would say, really, here, the projections that we have are based upon, have not really realized that. This gets us those 2 years, at which time those water conservation, that could help us deal with 2014 and on.
But I mean, a number of things, there was talk about more information on actual water bills so that people had some way of actually tracking their usage. You're not just getting a water bill, you're getting a comparison to previous water bills. You're continually being given information in order to use and really reduce the taxing of the system itself, which leads to all these increases. So I think that although 24% is a big jump in this year, we may find if we implement some of these fairly soon,
right,
that the need for that increase in year 2 or year 3 isn't quite as large.
Right. If I may, Councilor, I agree completely. As I said, this gets us through 2012 and 2011, 12 into 13, and then we need to do something for 14. If we're able to implement some of these changes and look at some of the revenue producing or expense saving actions that, one of the examples, for instance, of what this is paying for is the meter replacement program, which is going to give more accurate readings. It is going to bring in additional revenue, but it's also going to be reducing some of our costs for the reading of those types of improvements. The water conservation methods, ideas that or measures that are included within the plan will also kick in during that period of time, and so maybe we're able to reduce the amount, well, hopefully we'll be able to reduce the amount needed in 14, or maybe we even push it out to 15. I don't want to be unrealistic here, though. We do have, as you indicated, these are costs that were taken on years ago. These aren't something that we're taking the money now and spending it. We have to pay the debt that we incurred. And if absent this, again, it gets put on the taxes. I don't think that certainly doesn't lead people, if they're paying for water through their taxes, that doesn't lead them to understand that the money they're paying is going towards their use of water and the necessity of cutting down on the water. So, I think that there are some opportunities that are there. This is designed to get us through 2011, 12, and 13.
I just think that if there is perhaps a report that comes back to the council that lays out sort of a schedule of when we intend to implement some of these recommendations, that there's at least a sense that we're working to control all the costs.
Absolutely.
In that the increases that may or may not be approved here tonight are really the lowest or the highest possible that we need to implement.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We can certainly do that, Councilor.
Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, maybe this is a question for Mr. Laif. Do we have, in years past, big industrial users were certainly objected to the rate structure. Places, I want to say, not that they would object necessarily, but for example, Joan Fabrics, a big industrial user. I'm not aware of big manufacturing operations in the city. I suppose some of the cogen facilities may use a lot of water, but who are the, if there are any, are there big industrial users?
Sure. Your larger users are basically your surrounding towns: Drake at Kenwood Water, Tingsboro, Lowell General, Cross Point, Maycom was one. East Chelmsford, Mass Mills, Advantage Health, Saints Memorial Center. These are all numbers that could be readily available.
But, you know, in one sense, the rate structure is graduated, so the more you use, the more you pay. It doesn't go down the more you use. So that, I guess, in and of itself is a incentive for those bigger users to conserve.
Right.
You know, I'd be concerned the opposite effect of this. You know, the costs are fixed for the most part, and if we sell less, we get less revenue.
Well, right.
So conservation is maybe the right thing to do environmentally, but it's not going to fix this problem. And we have a $900,000 deficit. If we don't do this increase, it's going to go straight to the tax rate. And the choice is clear to me. You either have these big institutional users pay their share, or we burden the taxpayer. I mean, we don't have these discussions. The votes to spend this money are usually unanimous, and then the votes to fund them somehow get closer. But I don't think this is much of a choice at all. I think if we don't do this, this is tantamount to raising taxes for everybody as opposed to charging the people that are the big users here.
Thank you. Councilman Donza?
Again, I'm making this vote. I think that having the rate increase will be less of a cost burden on a typical homeowner than to let it go on to the tax rate. So I am voting what will cost the typical homeowner the least, and that is the rate increase.
Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think what's important to note is that what essentially we're voting on are the debt costs of running a water treatment system. And we all sat here and we all voted for them, which is the right thing to do. Water it's a valuable resource, and we only appreciate it when we don't have it, in my opinion. So when I sit here and vote, you know, a backup system for Belvedere and Centerville, and we adopt the loan order, or we have a backup system for pressure, or we're putting new interceptor lines from the pumping station to the treatment plant, we have to pay for it somehow. I think it's important to note that these increases are not a result of mismanagement. Number one, it's a water enterprise fund, and I supported it. I think I filed a motion to run this more, or run it like a business, that the users pay for the product, essentially. And that's what we're doing. So as much as I don't want to vote another nickel, we all understand people are stressed. And everything does seem to be going up. There's no doubt about it. But these commitments were already made. So as was mentioned, either we shift the burden to the ratepayers, or this is going right on the taxpayers. It's a tax burden, and that's, first of all, it's not the right way to run government, but it's not fair to those people that are not paying their fair share. So I just want to have one question. The senior discount, the block rate structure is still going to be in effect. How does this affect seniors? Mr. Manager or Mr. Leah?
Seniors typically just get charged for what they use.
Which is the minimum, but typically the minimum usage. It's a block rate structure. Okay, I just want to make sure as that. So while nobody likes it, we all voted for it, or those of us that were here, and now it's time to pay for it. And unfortunately, this is what we have to do. The other thing is, just so people know, we've lost positions, or we've not filled positions up at the water treatment plant. Mr. Leah has indicated that since 2005, it's gone from 46 employees, and we're down to 35. So trying to save costs, putting energy efficient measures in place, but at some point you have to replace the pipes, you have to replace the infrastructure, and that's what we're doing. We're not doing any exorbitant projects. We've seen them. We've seen them in South Lowell. We've seen them all over the city, and it's unfortunately, that's what we have to do.
Mr. Manager?
If I could, Councilor Elliott raised some of these, what this money, the cutbacks that we've made in the expenses through the reduction of personnel and a cut back on expenses, and mentioned the actions that we're taking to try to save money with some of the capital improvements, like the energy improvements. And that brought back, Councilor Mercier had asked, where are the savings? Well, you don't get the savings until you actually do the work. And we're just now doing the work on some of those, and just doing the Amoresco project just literally is just getting started. So you're not going to see those savings until all of that's done, and you have to come up with the money to do it, and then you start to see the savings, and that's what we're seeing here. So,
Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before the roll call, I just want to make a brief statement. I voted to raise water rates in the past, and I just feel strongly a 24% increase is a drastic increase, drastic. And if you look at all the water users, besides the residential homeowners, Mr. Manager, I feel strongly you're going to raise more money than you need here. And that's nothing can convince me otherwise. And I also know, believe me, you don't have to take me to school. I also know that if you don't vote for this increase, it's going to go on the burden of the taxpayer. But I'm just trying to bring out a principle here that you're going to have more money, Mr. Manager, than you need. And that's what my argument.
Well,
if it was a sensible increase, then I'd vote for it, but it isn't.
But Councilor, and I know I'm not going to convince you otherwise, but I'm going to try to use the facts here to explain why we're doing this. If you do the 24% increase, you eliminate the $900,000 in 2011. If you don't do the 24% increase, you're not going to eliminate that shortfall. It will go on the taxpayers, and that's the end of it. All you have to do is look at the picture. You can see that 24% eliminates the shortfall in 2011, produces a small surplus in 2012 that then disappears in 2013. As Mr. Moses said, you could raise the rates by 24% this year and eliminate that, then you could reduce the rates next year if you'd like. But all you're doing is then putting off that you'd have to raise the rates again for 2013. So those are the facts of how we have to come up with this.
Mr. Mayor, one more question to the auditor. Madam Auditor, how much money do we have in free cash? Would you know?
Free cash is a general fund.
How much?
Free cash is for the general fund. This is an enterprise fund, and you wouldn't be able to use it for the enterprise fund. This is a self-sustaining fund.
You don't have a dollar figure on what we have in free cash?
I have the Department of Revenue coming in tomorrow. Could be around $1 million. But my point is, you can't use.
I have a hard time hearing.
$1 million, Counselor.
$1 million in free cash?
Yes.
Could be.
Could be.
That is not-
Mr.
Mr. Manager.
You can't use that.
You can't use it for this.
You can't use free cash for an enterprise fund.
Okay, fine.
Counselor Broderick.
Thank you. Excuse me. The difficulty here is we took the vote, and I believe, I'm pretty certain, when we did, I was here, and we got a presentation that showed the impact when the debt service hit, that we were going to have to raise rates. Unfortunately, we didn't take a look at this and maybe take a vote back in June to raise them 12% to cover this year, and then 6% next year in 2012. We didn't do that. We could very simply vote to cover this, or else it's going to go on the taxpayers, which means it's, in my opinion, is not fair, and I think we all agree that it's not fair to put it on the taxpayers. But the reality is, you can file a motion in July to come in and cut the rate again, but you already took the vote to spend the money. We have to pay for it. It's very simple. You know, it's that simple. We can, whatever the money is, we can, if you want to take a vote, bring a motion and let the council take a vote to lower the rate, or we can maybe do more of a structured increase. That's very simple, but we have to raise this money now, or else it's going to go on the taxpayers, which is unfair.
Any further discussion? Need a motion? Motion by Councilor Mendonça, second by Councilor Broderick. Roll call.
Councilor Dakota?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Councilor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça?
Yes.
Councilor Mercia?
No.
Mayor Milanazzo?
Yes.
Councilor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield?
No.
7 yeas, 2 nays. The ordinance passes.
Last public hearing in City Council order of taking acceptance of Kelly Circle to take by eminent domain in fee a certain parts of land in the city of Lowell for municipal purposes, to wit, the layout and acceptance of Kelly Circle and other municipal purposes associated therewith. Chair opens the public hearing for those wishing to speak in favor. In favor. Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Those wishing to speak in opposition. In opposition, public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move approval by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Broderick. Roll call.
Councilor Dakota?
Yes. Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Councilor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça?
Yes.
Councilor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milanazzo?
Yes.
Councilor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. Moving back to the regular agenda under City Manager, communication from City Manager, request approval of out-of-state travel. We just have one this evening.
Move for approval.
Move for approval by Councilor Caulfield, seconded by Councilor Elliott. Roll call.
Councilor Dakota?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Councilor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça?
Yes.
Councilor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milanazzo?
Yes.
Councilor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Next item is a communication from the Planning Board, zoning amendment for 600 Rogers Street with ordinance. A motion would be in order to accept the report and place it on file, and then refer the order to a public hearing on December 7th.
So moved.
So moved by Councilor Mendonça, seconded by Councilor Elliott. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed to vote. Thank you. Vote in City Council order, transfer account from the School Department reserve account to the school budget ordered by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, that the amount of $1 million be transferred from reserve from school funds number 01237056-573200 to schools various, all of which are more fully described in attachment A. Order recommended and introduced by Bernard F. Lynch, City Manager, second reading by title. Vote in City Council order, transfer the amount of $1 million from the School Department reserve account to the school budget. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move approval by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Martin. Any discussion? Councilor Elliott.
I just, Mr. Manager, just give us a brief explanation for the people at home exactly what the transfer is about.
This is money that, if you recall, last year, we, working with the school department and with the budget issues they were having at that time, we determined that we would try to give them another $1 million on top of what we would normally give to the school department, to try to help with some of the Chapter 70 cuts. The thought at the time was to fund this by extending out our retirement assessment schedule to 2040. Because that seemed like the only option that we had in order to, avoid some of the major cuts that they were talking about. Since that time, they received quite a bit of stimulus money, but they wisely held on to that until next year to help with next year's budget. Otherwise, I had concerns that they were going to use our money, the $1 million plus the stimulus, and then we would be farther behind next year. But they indicated they'd rather use this $1 million this year and then use the stimulus next year. What happened along the way is, of course, we did, through our savings, eliminate that snow and ice deficit that we had, which then freed up $1 million that we could utilize to pay for this, as opposed to extending out the funding schedule. We felt that leaves that option for us in the future if so needed. I'd like to avoid doing that entirely, because I think it's more important for the city to really get a handle on its legacy costs, as Councilor Dakota has raised to the council in the past, and to pay for that, really move that up if at all possible. So this $1 million, that's how it came about. It was sit in reserve pending some type of action to come up with the money, and now we're just transferring it over.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Roll call.
Councilor Dakota?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Councilor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça?
Yes.
Councilor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milanazzo?
Yes.
Councilor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield? 9 yeas.
Vote in City Council order, a supplemental appropriation to meet fixed charges and current expenses of the City of Lowell for the fiscal year 2010-2011, ordered by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, that the amount of $1,750,000 $625,485 be hereby further appropriated for the following fixed charges and current expenses. Retirement pension, account number 0135756-560800, appropriation to be increased by $1 million. General Fund Short-Term Interest Account number 014589595-597200, appropriation to be increased by $93,539. General Fund Principal Account number 014583995-597300, appropriation to be increased by $415,000. Transfer to Fund 2005 account number to be determined, appropriation to be increased by $116,946, all of which are more fully described in Attachment A. Order recommended and introduced by Bernard F. Lynch, City Manager. Second reading by title. Vote in City Council order. A supplemental appropriation to meet fixed charges and current expenses of the City of Lowell for the fiscal year 2010-2011. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move approval by Council Mercia, second by Council Caulfield. Any discussion? Councilor Mendonça?
Through the chair to the manager, or maybe our chief financial officer. Are we receiving additional revenues in order to cover this additional appropriation?
Okay, actually, the part of this is being covered by the snow and ice deficit.
Yes.
What you did just a minute ago was just transfer the funds. This is actually using the $1 million, the $1.3 million that's available. And the other part of it was conservative estimates in local receipts. We finished the year better than we anticipated in 2010, so that the level of money that we can count on in the 2011 budget is higher than we originally anticipated. That will fund all this increase. It'll have no impact on taxes.
And if I may, these, other than the million, these other items really have to be paid. So absent our doing that with the miscellaneous receipts, we'd be we'd potentially in a position now where we'd have to say, okay, now we have to make some other cuts somewhere else to transfer the money over. But this is being funded through those, because we were conservative in those receipts, now we can do this as opposed to cutting other budgets.
Yeah, I know that when we created the reserve account for the schools, that we had subtracted the amount from the pension fund, and now we're using the snow and ice deficit reduction actually as new funds to fill that hole.
Right.
I also read in here, I believe that there was some funding from the acre redevelopment as part of this as well?
That's the debt and interest numbers you see.
Right, that's the debt and interest. Remember, we get a $500,000 a year grant over 20 years.
Is that continuing?
Yeah, it's continuing.
Okay, so that, again, so we had spoken earlier about the 1.3 million.
Right.
We have 1.6 some, and the rest of that is really coming from the redevelopment payment.
That's correct. And the other amount you see there is to clear up a problem that we had with our Parks Department with the money that was earmarked for park improvements a couple of years ago. The Park Department moved forward to do some of the work before the money actually came in, and the earmarked money, and when that didn't come in, now we were left in a hole. So this fills that hole now for us.
So basically, we have enough new funding for this that we're not in any significant way raising our tax levy for this fiscal year.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's right.
Thank you.
Council Mercia, then Council Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you just heard what the city manager said, we finished the budget better than we expected. And I think we can do that again. I think that money somehow is appropriated and then it isn't used, so now you transferred a lot of that money into the snow and ice deficit to be used to pay certain other things. That's why I didn't support the previous vote, because somehow we always end up better than we anticipated, and the money is there somewhere. And that's why I didn't support that last vote. That's it. I didn't say it. That's
Mr. Manager?
said.
Counselor, I have to respond to that. That doesn't always happen that way. Just 4 years ago, we ended the year with a negative $2.2 million. So it doesn't always happen that we end up with money left over. It's very possible that you end up without money. And so that's why we try to be as conservative as we can in making these budget actions since...
Well, $1.6 million came from somewhere, and we transferred it to here, to there, to there, to there, and yet we can't find $900,000. Well, I'm sure it might be there somewhere, and that's why I didn't
you know what?
support it.
It's very possible that come July, we'll have $900,000.
Well, in the
But
meantime-
we don't have it right now.
And in the meantime, we raised the rates for people that need the water.
But you would never have found the $900,000 in the enterprise fund, in my opinion. Councilor Elliott, then Councilor Broderick.
Mr. Manager, this $509,000 reimbursement, is that an earmark that has to be put in the budget, or is that a regular line item in CA?
It's a regular part of the budget. It has not been cut through 2003. It has not been cut through 2009, 10. I have no reason to believe it's going to be cut until it expires.
So was this just an oversight that it should be put into our debt service budget? Okay, thank you.
Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to whomever, maybe the auditor. Did we, this money here is general fund money. Can this be used for the waste, for the water enterprise account?
No, because it's general fund money.
Right, but didn't we just hear that we cannot use this for the water account? So that, what Council Mercy said we can't do anyway?
Oh, because this is general fund versus the enterprise
Right,
fund.
so we can't use this found money, so this 1.6 is not available to use, to pay the 900. It's an enterprise account, so we
Right.
can't do it,
I
Councilor.
understand. Can I respond to that? I understand what you're saying. I understand. I heard that. You can't use the general fund money for an enterprise account. But yet you said, people said here, if we don't support it, we're going to raise taxes. And in that respect, you can use that money to leverage and leave the taxes even for the taxpayer.
If we used it for that, then we would have to raise taxes to cover this stuff here we're transferring for. So
But we
it's,
could have used the money that you're appropriating to keep the tax base level. Couldn't you use it for that?
the 900 would have to be paid regardless of what account it came from. It's $900,000. If we want to say that we'll let it go to the general fund, and we'll use take 900 out of this 1.6, we're still going to be 900 short out of this 1.6. So we have to then raise taxes to get that 900. No matter how you slice it, the 900 is going to get put on the general fund, on the tax base.
Can you take from one enterprise to another?
You really shouldn't.
But you can.
Well,
You can, right?
the DOR
Yet-
frowns on it.
But you can, though. You can't you? And yet we have an overage in wastewater, but we don't in water. I don't know why you can't take from one to balance the other.
Because they're two separate enterprise funds.
But you still can use it.
The Department of Revenue will make you raise it if you are low at the end of the year. They won't just close a deficit to another enterprise
And-
fund. They look to the general fund always. They don't look to other funds.
And they
So-
say that you can't use free cash, but you can take the free cash and put it into the supplemental reserve, special appropriation, and use that. So what's the difference? It's like I'm taking from him to pay Peter to pay Paul, but yet you can't just directly pay him. So, anyway, that's all right.
On the vote, any other discussion? We have a motion, it's been seconded, roll call.
Councilor Dakota?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Councilor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça?
Yes.
Councilor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo?
Yes.
Councilor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield? 9 yeas.
Vote in City Council order to remove dangerous trees and large limbs in the Edson Cemetery. Ordered by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows. The amount of $12,500 be transferred from Sale of Lots Fund Number 1723, as more fully described in Attachment A, to appropriation account number 04914-170-580301, Cemetery General Improvements, more fully described in Attachment A. Order recommended and introduced by Bernard F. Lynch, City Manager. Second reading by title. Vote in City Council order to remove dangerous trees and large limbs in the Edson Cemetery. What's the wish of the council? Motion to
Move for
approve by Councilor Caulfield, seconded by Councilor Martin. Any discussion? Roll call.
Councilor Dakota?
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça.
Yes.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Counselor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Broderick.
Yes.
Counselor Caulfield.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Last item under city manager portion of the agenda, vote in city council order to provide wreaths, basket, cut flowers, etc. for gravesite lot owners who paid for these services during the holidays and to provide the temporary seasonal help as needed for the cemetery division. Ordered by the city council of the city of Lowell as follows, that the amount of $19,500 be transferred from Perpetual Care Fund number 8406, as more fully described in attachment A, to $9,500 appropriation account number 049141570-573400, more fully described in attachment A, and $10,000 appropriation account number 049141570-512000, more fully described in attachment A. Order recommended and introduced by Bernard F. Lynch, City Manager. Second reading by title. If there's no objection. Vote in City Council order to provide wreaths, basket, cut flowers, etc. for gravesite lot owners who paid for these services during the holidays and to provide temporary seasonal help as needed for the cemetery division. Is the wish of the council?
Approval.
Move approval by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Broderick. Any discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Dakota.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça.
Yes.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Counselor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Broderick.
Yes.
Counselor
Yes.
Caulfield. 9 yeas.
With subcommittee report, Chair recognizes Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be very brief because we have been discussing many of the things that we spoke of tonight, if probably not all of them. But very briefly, the City Council met prior to a joint subcommittee between the Finance Subcommittee from the School Committee as well as Finance Subcommittee from the City Council. The manager presented a presentation on the FY11 budget update, touched on many of the things again that we spoke of, the water rates, the snow and ice deficit, water forecast, the other enterprise funds, and I think that's about it. FY11. Local receipts are coming in ahead of schedule. Talked about contract funding, the school transfers that we just spoke of. So I don't want to rehash or reiterate many of the things that we discussed at the Finance Subcommittee, but they all folded into votes taken here tonight, water rates, those transfers. So the second part of the meeting was with the school department, and the school department presented their snapshot, their fiscal picture for FY 2012, and no surprise to any of us, but it's not. It's a bleak picture. They did outline their funding sources from last year and where those deficits are going to occur this year, particularly in the stimulus money, the ARA money, and those funds that they did receive this year, and that will not be available next year. Increases that they're looking at next year, certainly a almost 6.5 million in the loss of stimulus money. FY 2012 budget increases, they're looking at approximately 3 million. Those are going to come from healthcare costs, healthcare insurance that we spoke of, step and lane changes, special ed tuition, 250 to 500,000, non-employee contractual increases of 400,000. So the bottom line is looking at approximately $9.5 million deficit. They did indicate, Mr. Lane did indicate that they're looking at an education jobs funds, an increase of 4.8 million, hopefully, and that would leave a $5 million deficit. One item to note is that this $5 million does not include any potential contract increases. They're still in negotiations, and those negotiations date back to 2009. So, Mr. Mayor, that's a report of progress or an update on the Finance Subcommittee and the Joint Finance Subcommittee with the School Committee.
Any other comments on the subcommittee report? Hearing none, motion by Councilor Mendonça, second by Councilor Martin, to accept the reporter's report of progress. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Any other subcommittee reports? Hearing none, I would like to entertain a motion to suspend the rules so that we can deal with Rule 5. We've approached 10 o'clock, so we need first to suspend the rules by Councilor Broderick, second by Councilor Caulfield.
Roll call.
Come on. Get out of
Did
here.
someone say roll call?
Yes.
Okay, roll call to suspend the rules before we vote on, okay, roll call.
Councilor Dakota?
Yes?
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Councilor Martin?
No.
Councilor Mendonça?
Yes.
Councilor Mercia?
I guess so. Yes.
Mayor Milonazo?
Yes.
Councilor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor
Yes.
Caulfield? 8 yeas, 1 nay.
Having too much fun.
We stand under suspension, a motion to waive rule number 5 by Councilor Mendonça, seconded by Councilor Caulfield. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Let's vote. Next item, we have one petition this evening from Attorney James Flood, representing Kaufman Realty Incorporated, request to present gift of $4,000 to be used for the planning board. We have communication in our packet. Motion would be in order to refer this to the law department to drop proper vote. Councilor Caulfield?
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to comment on it. You know, it's been a very long evening, and I want to compliment you for running a great meeting.
Thank you.
So far.
I didn't hear that. What was that?
Said so far.
Oh, so far. I'm going to hold my nose and vote for the $4,000 that's coming to the city. But there's 29,000 cars outbound every morning on Wood Street, Middlesex Street, 29,000 cars at night, vehicles at night, inbound. And I don't know who's going to do the traffic study, but they ought to bring Houdini and some magician with them. And at 4 o'clock, 4:30, 5 o'clock, it's absolutely insane. So I'm waiting to hear this independent traffic report. It's going to be interesting. He's probably going to say, who in the world decided to build a business right there in the corner of the Rook Bridge? I don't want to sound facetious, but I just had to say that.
Anyone else? Again, we're referring it to the law department. Councilor Broderick?
Just as a quick question, and we suspended the rules, so we're going to stay here all night, Billy. It's quick question. This is a gift rather than a fee.
Yeah, this is
Why
a
is
gift.
that? This is obviously to pay for the city's study. Why is it done as a gift rather than a fee?
This,
If we know.
It may very well have just been, because it's a petition, it's listed in exactly as the petitioner presented it. It may very well turn out to be a required payment as opposed to a gift, and when we review it, we'll take a look at that.
Okay. Either way, I'll
But in
take
terms of
it.
the-
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Mercia?
this is a peer review of a traffic study that was already done. This is something that the city would perhaps have to pay for an independent person, and actually it went out to bid, and it did come back for a cost of $4,000, which the petitioner said he'd pay for. So in order to do that, we're accepting the gift, and so the law department's going to draw the proper vote for this to happen.
I think the point is that we can require them to be responsible for these fees, but I think it was really just a question of how the petitioner phrased it.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor of referring this petition to the law department signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Moving on to the motion section. First motion by Councilor Murphy. Request the City Council discuss larger charter changes to increase civic participation, including combined districts, at-large systems, term limits, et cetera, and refer this matter to the Rules Subcommittee. There's a second. Second by Councilor Dakota. Councilor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few weeks ago, we began discussing what it would take to make some charter changes. And so I think now is a good time to widen that discussion, really. Not now, but at a future Rules Subcommittee meeting to discuss some wider changes to further increase participation in our form of government here. And You know, during the discussion, I think it was 2 weeks ago, there was a comment made that, well, this is the way it's always been done since the beginning of the Plan E form of government back in the 1940s. And while it might be nice to have, you know, a counselor who's able to give a narrative of the beginnings of the Plan E form of government in the first person, it's also important, I think, to reflect upon what it is we're doing, what it is we're trying to accomplish, and whether or not the system that we are in really is achieving that. And so this is really to call for a discussion at that future Rules Subcommittee meeting to try and come up with better ways of doing things so that we do have that increased participation, which results in, you know, I think, better outcomes for all our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Murphy. Anyone else want to be heard in the motion? Council Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a very interesting motion. And these motions have come up in the past, term limits, at-large representation, and so forth. There's representation on this council from Belvedere, the Highlands, Pawtuckaville, and I believe, Mr. Murphy, don't you live in the Sacred Heart Parish?
Yes. Bleachery. Yep.
Right. At the last election, I think it was Ryan Barad from Centerville, put on an excellent campaign. I really liked his platform, and I do believe if he runs again, he'll be elected from Centerville. But we've all been to Centerville numerous times. Issues, the neighborhood meetings. We've been to Pawtuckaville. I've been all over this city. There's not one neighborhood that I exclude. So as far as I'm concerned, we all represent the entire city. And when you discuss term limits, I remember years ago with my colleague, former Mayor, Councilor Richard Howe. This came up and he said, we have term limits every 2 years. And if we did have term limits, this city would not benefit from the wisdom, the vision, and direction of a councilor like Richard Howe. So I'm not going to support this in any shape, form, or matter. It's been brought up before, a charter change. I understand on the radio today they're talking about a strong mayor. They had a strong mayor back in the 40s. The people said, get rid of it. We want the Plan E form of government. It's the best form of government you could have. A city manager, 9 city councils. So that's my take on that whole thing.
Thank you. Anyone else want to be heard on the motion? Councilor Mendonça.
I know some of these things have been discussed. Some of them have been voted on by the general public, not just the council. We've had term limits. They've been removed. But at the same time, this very meeting, we had a zoning change proposed, and somebody decided to question it. And then we have something that's better than what we had before. So I'm not opposed to discussing it or sending it to the Rules Subcommittee for that purpose. I mean, I'd like to have the discussion and see if maybe from the discussion we comes out something better. Maybe it won't. Maybe the result of the discussion is there is no better alternative, leave the way it is. But that's one of the options. So I'm going to support the motion just for the purposes of having that discussion take place.
Thank you. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me. I concur with Councilman Mendonça again this evening. I don't see any harm in having discussions, in having an open dialogue. I have my own opinions on these particular issues, and so I'm not going to mislead people into thinking that I'm going to support them necessarily, but I think that there may be other issues and other topics and other ways. The motion as it reads is to discuss larger charter changes to increase civic participation. I support that. I think we should talk about it. We can always discuss things and see if there's a better way to do things, engage people. We talked, seems like a month ago, but I think it was last week, about a home rule petition to allow 17-year-olds to vote. in Lowell, one of the things we do is we evolve, and we hopefully continue to build on success and make things better. And, it starts with discussions, and I think that, we should look at doing that and then take a vote and decide by majority whether we want to do certain things. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next motion, do you mind if I do it from the chair? Motion by Mayor Milanazzo, City Council requests the city manager have the proper department place stop sign at the intersections of Brattle Street and Douglas Road and Brattle Street and Dinsmore Street. Seconded by Councilor Elliott. Motion speaks for itself. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Thank you. Next motion by Councilor Caulfield, requests the City Council have dialogue relative to businesses leaving the city of Lowell. Second by Councilor Mercia. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. The motion speaks for itself. Last Wednesday in the Lowell Sun, the headlines on the front page was good news, bad news. So I read the bad news first, and the bad news was Tyco was moving 100 jobs to Newington, New Hampshire. And it had the manager's comments in the paper, so you knew about it Tuesday evening at the council meeting. And the funny thing about the whole article, the Lowell Sun read the article in a New Hampshire paper. That's how they got the word that 100 jobs was leaving Lowell. And my question, Mr. Manager, these 9 councilors deserve to know if there's jobs leaving the city. And if I'm in the Mullis Market or a variety store or the gas station, and a citizen comes up to me and says, how come these jobs are leaving the city? I don't know anything about it. It's embarrassing. So that's the gist of my motion, and I wish you would inform the council if any negative such as this is going to come about. And did the city do anything to entice them to stay here? Did they meet with them? I don't know. Behind the scenes or behind the story, they're gone. And I tried to call Tyco. I couldn't get a hold of them. I just wanted some answers. And maybe you can give us some answers on this issue.
Councilor Broderick, then I'll recognize the manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand the intent behind the motion, but I'm not sure if we're going to require weekly reports or if it's over a certain number of employees. Good news tends to travel more quickly than bad news sometimes, and I can imagine that they had a press release designed and ready to go, long before it was announced publicly or announced that this was happening. I'm not really sure what where we draw the line here. We're going to have weekly reports, and looks like we have a presentation ready. If it's a big issue, I suppose, sure. More information is better, but I really don't know what we were looking for here.
Mr. Mayor, if I may answer that. If we have weekly reports about jobs leaving the city, we're in serious trouble. The 9 board of directors of the city deserve to know if it's 25, 50, or 100 people are leaving the city. The jobs are leaving the city. We expect and we deserve that information. I'm not looking for a weekly report.
Manager Lynch.
If I may, Councilor, first off, I was caught a bit unaware of it myself until we got the final word late Tuesday. And should I have told you on Tuesday night? We have businesses that come, businesses that go all the time, and these things happen. Did we reach out and try to work with them? To some extent, but just a couple months ago, the City Council voted on what was happening at that building. And what was happening at that building is Cobham was adding almost 100 new jobs. Cobham and Tyco and Harris were all part of a larger corporation that split apart. And there was a decision made by Tyco to move those 100 jobs up to another facility they had up in Newington that made sense to them because it made sense to them, and also because Cobham needed the space to bring those other 100 people in that they were moving down from Manchester and up from Bolton. These things do happen on a regular basis, and I think though that the track record of the city of Lowell over the course of the last 4 or 5 years is very positive. And so I actually took this opportunity, and if I could, I'd like to present this a little bit of information in response to your motion, because I think it is a good story to tell. I know that you'd like to focus on the fact that those 100 jobs left, but the reality is that the city of Lowell is doing quite well compared to our peers, and very frankly, during a very difficult economic time, doing very well compared to the prior 5 years of this past decade.
If I could, Mr. Manager, just to be fair, no objection from the council? Do we go through this presentation?
If you can see here, what we've provided to you is the change in average monthly employment for the city of Lowell, as well as the neighboring towns of Billerica, Chelmsford, and Tewksbury. Billerica being blue, obviously being Lowell at the top, and Billerica being pink, Chelmsford being yellow, and Tewksbury being a greenish blue. You can see that the city of Lowell actually was almost at 35,000 jobs in 2001 before it bottomed out in 2004 at about 33,000 jobs. We then grew that from 2005, 2006, and we held our own during 2006 and actually bumped up in 2008 before this economy turned. But we're at roughly the same point we were in 2004, and that's in an economic condition that has been compared to the Great Depression. So I think we're doing quite well in that regard in terms of people that are working. In fact, I think if you go back and you just add in the employees that we eliminated from the city payroll, from positions that we eliminated, we'd actually be higher now than we were back in 2008. So, I think we're doing pretty well in terms of keeping jobs in the city. Compare that to our neighbors of Billerica and Chelmsford and Tewksbury, which in fact have lost more jobs within their communities. Likewise, the unemployment rate. And I know these are difficult for the people to see, but again, Lowell is doing quite well compared to our peer communities. It would be tough to compare us to our neighboring communities, so we look to compare ourselves to the Haverhills, New Bedfords, Lawrence, Worcesters, and Massachusetts as a whole. And again, we're doing quite well. When you compare us to certainly to New Bedford, to Lawrence, and we're pretty even with Worcester, not quite as well as Haverhill, but overall we're doing well in terms of the better than our peers. Not good enough. We all agree we need to find jobs, we need to create jobs in our city and in our state and in our country, but that's the reality. In terms of Lowell area layoffs from 2009 to 2010, if you go through all of these, and again, I know this is tough for you to read, but there isn't one layoff here in the city of Lowell that of any sizable magnitude. And in fact, those people that work for Tyco that do live here in the city of Lowell will now have to commute, unfortunately, but they will retain their jobs. But that is providing the space now for a Cobham to actually expand into that space. In terms of vacancy of our Class A office, Lowell has an average of 13.2% vacancy, compared to Haverhill at 22%, Lawrence and New Bedford, there are no Class A properties. Worcester's at 14, so we're better than Worcester, 19 on 128 and 16% on 495. So we're one of the most occupied communities and areas in the state. So in terms of our efforts to fill up our office space, we're doing quite well. The businesses we've attracted and retained over the last 4 or 5 years include Motorola, Cobham, who I've mentioned, Metabolics, Zenith, Novus, Cadient, several of those which we stole from the state of New Hampshire, Christic, Borrego Solar, Target, Lowe's, Pride Star, Moms and Jobs. Why do communities choose Lowell? There are several reasons. streamlined permitting, the incentives and tax policies that we have, the positive quality of life and the image of the community, and a proactive and progressive government that they find to be very attractive. I met with a business just the other day that was raving about the government, particularly planning and development, but the professionalism and the proactive nature of the city government here in the city of Lowell. Biggest challenge we have a limited inventory of real estate. We're a small city in terms of geography and very small in terms of space, but we're working with businesses that are interested in locating here in the city. We're currently working with a solar engineering and construction company, a solar equipment manufacturer, a construction engineering company, a contract sewing production company, a food manufacturer, a health information technology company, a sports apparel company, information technology company, a medical device manufacturer, all interested in locating here in the city, bringing several hundred jobs to the community. I would venture to guess if we were successful in getting all those, it would be about 1,000 jobs that we'd be able to pull in. I can't give you the names of them because it's all confidential, but certainly businesses are interested in locating in the city of Lowell. And yes, the Tyco did move up to Newington, and Harris, which spun out from that group, did look to, they needed more space than we had available for them, but the bottom line is I appreciate the Lowell Sun putting a story in that they left, but I think that equal attention should be paid by everyone to the successes we've had, like Cobham, like Metabolics, like Cadient, and so on. So, and then I've just given some other activities we're doing, but thank you very much for giving me the opportunity and setting me up to give that presentation.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Murphy, I saw his hand up first. Councilor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I first read the motion, I thought the primary concern was about, the number of jobs leaving the city, the number of businesses leaving the city, and not about, how it would appear to shoppers in Demoulas. What I think is a more constructive discussion is really how we go about sustaining what the manager displayed here, how we build upon those successes, what policies we put into place, whether it's improving our infrastructure or talking about anti-poaching agreements, maybe regional anti-poaching agreement, further developing our TIF policy, but really focusing in on the future, on what we can do as a council to further grow businesses here and make sure that they're willing to sustain themselves here in the city. And so I think that really ought to be the drive of the discussion and not the other. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have some comedians on this council. I just want to say that I apologize, Mr. Manager, for you and your staff working so hard to bring that forward. All I'm saying is I know what the city has done. I was part, along with these members of this council, Lowe's, Target, Crosspoint, Motorola, a lot of businesses that have moved into the city, I've been part of that. And that's all positive. And when we do positive things, it's in the paper. Except if there's a negative, it doesn't want to be appeared in the paper. So that's why I'm bringing that forward. We have to share in the positives and the negatives. And if 100 jobs are leaving the city, this council, this elected body, should know that.
Councilor Mercia.
I just wanted a copy of that. Thank you.
Anyone else in the Councilor Mendonça?
Well, as I read the motion, it requests that the council have a dialogue. So my question to the maker of the motion, is this the dialogue, or do we need to refer this to some subcommittee in order to have that dialogue?
Economic Development Subcommittee, no.
This was the dialogue.
Okay, this was the dialogue. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, vote. Thank you. Next motion by Councilor Mercia. City Council requests the city manager to look into problems associated with the Pollard Memorial Library and refer the matter to the Public Safety Subcommittee. Second by Councilor Elliott. Councilor Mercia. I know we have someone registered to speak.
Diane Cloutier, 18th Street.
Thank you for your patience.
Good evening, if it still is evening. My name is Diane Cloutier, 120 18th Street in Lowell, and as many of you know, I've worked as a library assistant for the past 12 years at the Pollard Library. I want to first thank Councilor Mercier for making this motion to refer this to a subcommittee and for giving some of us who work at the library an opportunity to bring our safety concerns to the council. Some of the other library assistants and myself sent a letter to Rita Mercier addressing our issues, and tonight I was elected to bring them forward to you in the hopes that they could be referred for further discussion at a personnel subcommittee. We wanted the council to know that we believe first and foremost that the current management of the library truly does care about the safety of the staff and the patrons in the library, which is great. There have been some changes made to attempt to deal with some of the issues, and we hope to continue to work with them and exchange ideas with the management to continue to make the library safe for everyone. We believe that that begins with a clear-cut policy for behavior and safety in the library. One of the major safety concerns is the teens, who are causing daily chronic disruptions in the library. From approximately 1 to 8 p.m., there's an influx of teens, most of whom have come to use the library for which it was intended. They come to study, they take out materials, they use the computers, they meet with their friends, and the truth is that these teens who are using the library properly deserve, as well as the staff deserve, a reasonably quiet and a safe place to do so. Unfortunately, there are literally dozens of other teens who come to the library with other intentions. They go from floor to floor, they disrupt the library, they come in loud, they play music, they curse at each other, they bang on the elevator doors, they fight with each other, and then they curse at the staff, disrespect the staff, and sometimes, unfortunately, even threaten the staff. If they are asked to leave, they continue to curse at the staff all the way out the door, and they create a disturbance when they exit. Once they get outside, unfortunately, some of them choose to bang on the outside windows, to kick on the outside windows, to throw rocks at the library, and to a point where somebody actually has to go outside the building and ask them to leave from the front of the building. Unfortunately, it does not end there. Sometimes they choose to sneak back into the library and continue the same behavior where they're disruptive, then they're banned, and they completely ignore the ban in return. We believe that the problem is twofold. One, there is no way to identify who these teens are. So they keep returning, and no one's really clear in the library not only who they are, but who is and is not allowed in the library for that day, for that week, for that month. Number two, there's no clear-cut policy on behavior and safety in the library. Currently, there is a user behavior policy that was drafted by the trustees that says that these types of behaviors are not allowed. Unfortunately, it does not say what happens to a patron who violates the policy. So what it does say simply is that each incident will be handled on a case-by-case basis. We believe that the library needs a policy that says if you curse at the staff, you have to leave. If you return, the police should be called. And there should be a report made every time someone is asked to leave the library, and a picture printed out from the security cameras that the library has in place to document who this group of problem teens or problem patrons are. We believe that in the absence of such measures and such a policy, that these same problem teens create the same disruptions and, unfortunately, often threatening behavior on a consistent basis. I myself have been cornered in the library stacks by a group of teens who were asked to leave. They returned 3 times after they were asked to leave and were asked to leave again. Unfortunately, they came up behind me with their faces covered and scared the daylights out of me in the stacks. These were not 10-year-old kids. These were 12, 13, 14, 16, 17-year-old kids. I've also had an incident where a threatening note was dropped right in front of me that was so graphic, I could not repeat it to you today except to summarize that it did say, quote, "Die in hell." I gave a copy of that note to Rita Mercier. The police were never called. These types of incidents and behavior should not be allowed in the library, and I don't think anyone disagrees with that. There are other safety concerns, including pornography or the viewing of explicit material, which we've discussed at the senior center, on the internet computers at the Pollard Library, and the issue of the level 3 sex offenders that are allowed in the library, and how these two issues relate to each other. Currently, the internet computers on the second floor have no filters to block explicit material. Also, according to the current policy, a 13-year-old child can sit down and use those computers. Also, any adult or a level 3 sex offender can sit down on the same floor at the same computer and access that material. Since all of these computers have access to explicit material, we have to ask, is this a combination that makes sense? The question is, why do children under 18 have access to that material to begin with? And since the staff is told that we're not supposed to monitor what patrons are looking at on the internet, then children can be looking at anything. And if there's not a policy that says what is and isn't explicit, then even if the staff sees something that's inappropriate, there isn't anything we can do because we're told it's subjective. This ambiguity of what is and is not explicit, and the fact that children 13 years old have access to it, again, clearly is not a good combination. Perhaps this needs to change. I would strongly recommend that anyone who's listening or watching tonight, or watches the DVD tomorrow, and has concerns about this, attend a personnel subcommittee meeting to voice their own concerns and to discuss this further. We as library assistants want everyone to be welcome in the library, and we want the library to be safe for everyone. So we respectfully request that the council recommend to forward these issues to the personnel subcommittee. Thank you for hearing our
I
concerns.
think you mean public safety.
Yes, ma'am.
Subcommittee. Personnel is a different subcommittee altogether.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Basically, I have the same scenario that she did, that I was presenting these problems to the council and these concerns, and hope that I could refer them to the Public Safety Subcommittee for a review and rectification. The first concern is the lack of enforcement to violations in the rules as far as behavior is concerned. The policy states one thing should be done, and the situation of disrespect is dealt with in a more lenient manner. With this approach, chronic daily problems are escalating, and some of the library staff are being harassed by patrons in a disrespectful manner. 3 teenage males came into the library, pulled out wires out of the internet computers, and when they were told to leave, they became belligerent, and the staff endured the brunt of this unnecessary behavior. And I personally feel that that's uncalled for. And the speaker spoke eloquently about library cameras that should and could be used in a more informative and productive manner. If a patron of the library causes problems, their picture should be printed out from the security camera to be an incident report filed with this picture kept on file to track the chronic problem patrons. There are many concerns that you heard, and I would forward, but I also want to say that the speaker, as well as myself, we're reflecting on the current policy, and the management of the library or the policies are not in any way detriment to any of this. We're not trying to say that things, these people are wrong, but I'm looking just to provide a new safety and behavior library policy that addresses these concerns with the input from the staff and the approval of this council. So that's what I'm asking, just to go over the policy and refer it to a public safety subcommittee. That's the gist of this motion, if we could do
Any
that.
other comments, questions? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Next motion by Council Mercia. City Council requests the city manager to provide a report on steps taken to address the HVAC, air conditioning, and air quality ventilation problems at the Butler School. Second by Council Broderick. Council Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some time ago, we took a vote on about $350,000 that was an overage from the Maury School, and we were told that it had to be all spent. And there were like 9 different schools that had different concerns, and that money was going to be dealt out to the different areas, spread over the different schools. But I did receive a call from people, teachers at the Butler School, and they were concerned about the HVAC, the air conditioning, the ventilation. It seems the windows are all closed. They can't open them, which is fine, but there's breathing problems. People have amassed some sort of coughs and things like that over there. And I had brought it up, and I thought I'd make the motion because it has not been addressed yet, and I was told that it would be, whatever the case may be. I would just like to look into the report from the manager that what steps are going to be taken or have already been taken. Thank you.
Thank you. Once we get the report, I would ask that it be sent to the school committee as well.
Thank you, yes.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Thank you. Last motion of the evening by Council Mercia. City Council requests the city manager to have the proper department provide upgraded inter-office telephone directory. Second by Councilor Caulfield. I think we already got it.
Yes, complete. Motion complete. Thank you very much.
Should I be nervous that the mayor's name wasn't there? It's just the mayor? I shouldn't be nervous, huh? Councilor Martin?
Well, I know we got the directory tonight, and obviously haven't looked at the contents, but the prior directory for the newer members had a picture of Maxwell Smart on the cover on his shoe phone. And this one has a picture of the bat phone, I think, that Commissioner Gordon used to use to call Batman. Either that or it's the hotline between the presidency and Moscow. But so I compliment the creativity of the cover designer of our city phone directories.
Thank you.
No doubt.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Council Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before we adjourn, if I could remind the public and my colleagues of the dedication of the Mickey Ward Circle at Industrial Avenue on Saturday, November 20th at 10 o'clock in the morning. So people are invited, the public's invited.
Right.
Thank you.
And thank the state delegation for their involvement there.
Yes, thank you for that.
Motion to adjourn by Council Broderick, second by Council Martin. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye. Thank you.